It's not hard to verify that, though.
That is definitely not difficult to verify, but so we will suspend judgment and conclusion on that matter until we verify the details. But as of now, that is what we hear. But as to whether we will accept and believe, we shall wait until the cows come home and we can actually count and verify.
We are really at a very bad place where everything that comes from government is like,
We are really at a very good place where everything that comes from government,
you have to still
we question.
verify.
When we then believe it, we have believed it because we have verified and we know it to be true.
look at what that is doing to our fight against COVID.
Unfortunately, we need to go a little further and look at what it has done with our fight against flooding, what it has done with our fight against locusts. Meaning, we've given them an entire cycle to actually lay eggs. Now they're hatching. The warning signs, again, came much, much earlier, the beginning of the year, and we're being told, hatching season is around. It is going to come, and the numbers will have not quadrupled or multiplied. It'll be a multiplication like you have never seen before.
Yeah.
And you were told, guess what? It's going to happen within the country. So it's not as though they're going to come from some other place. They're already here. Okay. Yet the government tells us that what they've done, they've managed to spray 20,000 hectares of land.
And then they ran out of...
And then they're saying that the 230 million shillings that had been allocated, this according to the Ministry of Agriculture, towards this endeavor is running out. Now you see, no one is telling you the specific places that have been sprayed, what it costs to spray a hectare. The sort of details that allay your fears. You're given a lump sum figure, you're given a lovely, nice general statement, and you're just supposed to believe and continue with it. And it is the same ministry that informed you we do not have a problem with food. Security, secure. On the one hand, other people who deal with locust says, with these locust issues, it's not just going to be a food issue, but it's going to be a food security issue. Then the next thing you hear is that we need to import maize. Now, okay, what on earth are you supposed to believe under these circumstances? Does it not invite questioning and asking, okay, we've heard you say this, we've heard you say this. Clarify for us and tell us which is which really, or what came before the other. Because it may be just a problem of communication, not a truth deficit. So just clarify it.
Or maybe just not getting enough information.
Yes.
We receive information in bits and pieces,
Yes.
in 140 characters.
Yes.
And so 140 characters talking about importation of food, another 140 talking about spraying of locusts, another 140 talking about management of floods and food security. And then we put all that together and we say,
It gets very confusing, doesn't
it
it?
becomes confusing.
You have a whole body, but then the arm is suddenly appearing next to the ear. All right? The nose is somewhere on your forehead. Now, it gets a bit tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start off with going global, as we always do in the morning, Nduoko. COVID-19 in numbers.
Not good numbers, and that's because it's a lot higher than it was yesterday. Just 2,000 shy of 2 million cases in the world now. 1,998,551 cases so far. 126,686 deaths. However, 478,741 recovered cases. It's looking... we can't ignore the recovered cases. Almost 500,000 recovered vis-a-vis 2 million cases. Not so bad. But still, the numbers continue to bring alarm. And if you want to look at the United States, we talked about this yesterday, and they're getting to, I think now is at the point where they're asking themselves, and even the world is asking, what on earth is going on? Seems that there is quite an interesting strain of COVID in the US because as callous as it sounds, people are dropping like flies. 613,886 cases in the US so far. 26,047 deaths. And total recovered 38,820. So that means they have active cases of 549,019. We're looking at, again, still 2,000 plus deaths in the US yesterday alone. And from the numbers that we saw so far in the state of New York only, until yesterday, 10,000 deaths having been recorded since the first case was found in the beginning of February. Spain, 174,060 cases, 18,255 deaths. Italy, 162,000 cases, 488, with 21,067 deaths. France at 143,303 cases with 15,729 deaths. China has 56 new cases as of yesterday and 1 death. Still saying that the genesis of this was imported cases, but now amongst those infected, we have quite a number of Chinese nationals themselves. So now they've gone from imported cases to community transmission again.
It's back.
Yeah.
But now China is behaving like the rest of the world.
Saying that we were done with this and we were fine.
Starting with somebody who came in with a recent history of travel, and then we've gone into community transmission.
Yep. Right. So if you want to look in Africa, yes, we see that Kenya's cases up to 216 from yesterday, with the new cases at 8 yesterday. And then now, it seems that more counties are being included in this. Nairobi, Mombasa, Siaya and Mandera identified for phase 1 of mass testing that's going to be applied by the Ministry of Health, where they're going to deploy 12,000 cases. We look into 12,000 kits rather, but we look into that, whereby now Nakuru has been added to the list of counties having been affected with cases of COVID-19. Looking at other African countries, South Africa, 2,415 cases. Egypt, 2,350. Algeria, 2,000 cases. Morocco, 1,888 cases. Looking a little bit now into West Africa, where Cameroon, 848 cases. And Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, 638 cases. Ghana, 636 cases. Niger, 570 cases. Still along those same kind of numbers that we saw yesterday. Guinea with 363 cases. Senegal with 299. DRC with 241. We talked about Kenya at 216. And it goes on like this. Nigeria at 350 cases. Gabon at 57 cases. So we still have quite a number of countries that are still under the 100 case mark. But it goes along these lines, and this is what we are seeing here.
Going back to maybe even just the states alone, right? Do we have the numbers of people who are dying or people who are contracting the normal flu that they usually would get? Or is that also now being lumped up with...
The numbers that we saw last flu season, 70,000 people died of flu in the United States. And this is something that they expect.
In the flu season?
In the flu season. That it is likely to happen.
So how many have died this year?
From flu?
From flu.
Well, that's something that we'd have to check out.
Is it possible that those numbers are different, are separate, or is there a possibility that the numbers are also being just lumped up?
I would hope that they would not lump these numbers together, because we see, there's accusations all over the place now, underreporting in the United Kingdom, misrepresentation of the number of deaths in China, and a lot of these accusations are coming out of the United States. So I want to err on the side of positivity, if there's such a thing, and say that they would not want to lump these numbers together. But then if you see the numbers of people who died from flu, 70,000 in 2019, 50-something thousand in 2018, it pales in comparison to the numbers of the people who are dying from COVID. Already at 600 and something thousand cases of COVID with 26,000
deaths.
Right. So
how long is the flu season?
It's about 3 months.
All right. So we're in the second month of COVID.
About 3 months. Yeah.
We're in the second month of COVID at less than 20,000 deaths. It doesn't really pale. It's
over. We're getting to 30,000 deaths, right? So if you want to look at, let's look at this year, right? Which, if the CDC talks about the flu season carrying through between October 2019, the onset, So it's probably broadening it by about 3 months. October 2019 to April 4th should have ended last week, 2020. So what they've said is that there have been through 39 million to 56 million flu illnesses. This is just the normal flu, right? 18 million to 26 million medical visits, 410,000 to 740,000 hospitalizations, and then 24,000 to 62,000 flu deaths. So that's 62,000 rounded up to the 70,000.
That's according to?
This according to the CDC. Okay.
And this is for this year, right?
This is for this year.
For this season,
and according
rather.
to them, the season ended
Last week.
Ends last week. Ends right about now. So this is what they were.
The end of the season is demarcated by the end
by
of
the end of the winter.
The cold
so
season,
they're
so to
entering
speak.
into spring now. So it's usually when you start the autumn months now, October, then getting into the terrible winters that a lot of them experience. So it's the cold season really, that the crispy cold and then into the snow is where flu pops up. So this is what they saw.
Okay.
So essentially what you're saying is that the deaths that are reportedly caused by influenza are more than the ones which can be attributed to COVID.
So far.
Even if you go back into history and you go back to countries that have issues of influenza like the UK, the story is the same.
Yeah. So now what they're saying is that so far in the US, though, the cases now have equaled the minimum number of cases of flu. The minimum number of deaths for flu in this season was 26,000, sorry. So that is where the US is right now in terms of COVID deaths. Now, seeing as it's still continuing, it could be that they could reach the threshold for influenza that they experienced, which was 62,000. They could reach and surpass that with COVID, but they're yet to see so that they can make that comparison.
They've differentiated.
Yes, they have.
But then, of course, when you're talking about influenza and you're talking about deaths caused by influenza, perhaps in the previous season when COVID wasn't there, how then can you actually differentiate and say that this was not COVID related? Because there were reports of severe cases of influenza. There were reports of influenza-like situations that had hitherto not been experienced.
With pneumonia-like symptoms.
Yes, and we all know that those are upper respiratory conditions. In short, there are many questions that experts are yet to answer or respond to with regards to this. Yes.
Still early days.
It is.
It actually is really, in all honesty, it is early days.
And now it makes sense, though, just looking at these reports from the CDC and listening to what the Surgeon General of the US said and the top boss at the Centers for Disease Control, is that they were comparing what they saw. When they talked about them getting into a peak by last week, they were comparing this to flu season. And so still comparing it to what they know. And even what we talked about yesterday is you can't do that with COVID. You can't compare it to what you know because this is something
new,
totally different. It's totally new. So you can see why 2 weeks ago they were saying we're reaching our plateau because they thought that this is within the flu season. But now they are in spring. Even from our weather reports, we see New York and in California, the weather is warming up. They're getting into a different season. But the deaths are increasing. The cases are increasing. So I think they're at a place now whereby they're saying, we thought this was going to be plateau point and then us, getting into a crescendo. But it's not happening. It's not happening now.
Take a look at weather shortly and City as we go into the weather. Today's proverb?
It's a Swahili saying. Usitukane mkunga na uzazi ungali. Directly translated, do not insult a midwife when the child is still being born or when the bearing of a child is still ongoing.
Shut your mouth first.
Let the child be born first.
Let the child be born.
Yes, just don't go around insulting the midwife when you know very well she's very
Don't burn a
crucial.
bridge when you're still on it.
Examples abound. You see, we've been speaking about the attitude our leaders have towards what we call the common citizenry. And they forget that in the absence of the citizenry, there is no one to lead. In the absence of the citizenry, there is no one to pay taxes. This is the bulk of the citizens of the country. So when by statement and by action you clearly indicate that you disregard them and that their welfare is not your priority and yet that is what you are actually mandated to look after, then kweli wewe unatukana mkunga.
Mkunga.
Yes.
Kunga is a midwife.
Yes, and the child
Well,
is yet to be
Uzazi
born.
is still
Yes,
ongoing.
it's all going, and you still need taxes to be paid. You still need people to believe what you're saying. You still need them to follow you, and you keep behaving in a way that is tantamount to insulting them. And then you're surprised and say, Kenyans are hard-headed. Kenyans are difficult.
18 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning.
...24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and
in most parts of the city later on today with highs of 26 and lows of 16. In Nyeri, it's mostly cloudy at 16 degrees. Thunderstorms expected in the afternoon, highs of 25 and lows of 16. Nakuru is mostly cloudy this morning, turning into thunderstorms later on, highs of 26 and lows of 16 as well. Looking into Eldoret, where it's partly cloudy, thunderstorms will be the forecast for today, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Kisumu is mostly cloudy this morning. It'll open up into rain later, showers through most parts of Kisumu city. 29 degrees the high and lows of 20. Mostly cloudy in Malindi this morning, but it'll be a wet afternoon, highs of 32 and lows of 27. Take a look into Mombasa later. Right now, then into Kampala. 20 degrees is cloudy, and it's going to be a wet day through into most parts of the evening. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is cloudy this morning as well. Scattered thunderstorms forecasted for the afternoon. Highs of 30 and lows of 24. Johannesburg at 13 degrees this morning is mostly cloudy through partly cloudy conditions through the rest of the day. Highs of 19 and lows of 8. In Lagos this morning, it's fog very low this morning at 28 degrees. Rain showers expected for the afternoon with highs of 34 and lows of 26. In New York, it's 10 degrees and cloudy this morning. Showers expected in the Big Apple. Highs of 14 and lows of 6. Paris is clear skies this morning at 7 degrees, 19 the high, and lows of 7. And where Big Ben tolls in London at 4 degrees, it's clear skies today, highs of 17 and lows of 4.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
www.spicefm.co.ke. Also on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter at SpiceFMKE is a handle for all of those platforms. Now let's dive right into the headlines. The headline in the Standard today, second day of a Ruto headline, right? Ruto allies face the axe. There you go. So this is it's being called a sibling rivalry, where after neutering the deputy president, Uhuru's allies now go for Ruto's henchmen in parliament, accusing them of sabotaging the president's agenda. Duale and Murkomen dismissed the plot to sack them as empty threat. And it puts various people who are on the line there. Of course, you know, Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen is a Ruto ally. It's been said the National Assembly Majority Leader Aden Duale is also a Ruto ally. Now, the others who hold crucial seats: Senate Majority Whip Susan Keheka, Kimani Ichung'wah, the MP, Budget and Appropriation Chair, William Cheptumo, who's a Baringo North MP, Justice and Legal Committee Chair, Gladys Bosch-Sholei, Wasingish Woman Rep, Delegated Legislation Committee Chair, Kareke Mbiuki, Maara MP, Environment and Natural Resources Chair, Samson Cherargei, Nandi, Senator, Justice and Legal Affairs Chair, and Benjamin Washiali, who is a National Assembly Majority Whip, MP for Mumias East. These ones are basically being said that soon kitumbua kitaingia mchanga. Kitumbua kitaingia mchanga.
Actually, to understand the depths of this thing and how serious it's being felt, if you read the reactions as indicated in the papers, you start with what the Vice Chairman, David Murathe, has said, and then the responses. The responses are sharp to the point of almost being insulting. Both Aden Duale and Kipchumba Murkomen seem to say the same thing, that Murathe they don't play in Murage's league. I wonder what this league is. Now, the other one then goes on to say that he's not a guest, but I found a member. That is Aden Duale. Okay? And he adds it by saying, whatever Murathe is saying does not deserve a reply. And yet he has replied. Then, Murkomen now takes it to a different level. He brings it's a very, very, very interesting analogies. And he says that this, he actually refers, if we're to believe what has been reported here, says Murathe is a strange dog. Okay? Essentially, he has called Mr. Murathe a canine. Okay? That thinks he's bigger than his master. I wonder who this master is. And then he says, he's too small for my radar to detect, yet you're talking about him. He has no legal mechanism of enforcing his hollow threats. Now, whenever someone claims they're not reacting and yet they're making long statements, does that not speak volumes? Does that not tell you that whatever those threats were, whatever they are, they've hit home?
They're right there.
Oh, they've hit home. These reactions are not mild. Because if someone actually believed what they are now saying, they would have said nothing. Said, well, he's entitled to his views, probably, and that left at that. But this is a...
but
it's a comeback.
This man, Murathe, right? Is he in Jubilee or is he not?
Had he left Jubilee?
He had said he has left Jubilee.
No.
He said so, yes.
He did not say left Jubilee.
He said, I will not... I will no longer be vice chair of. In fact, by not being vice chair of Jubilee is because you were saying I will leave Jubilee.
No. Eric, if you say you will leave Jubilee and you don't leave, then you haven't left Jubilee.
And that's where I'm coming to. I'm coming from.
Yes.
Why come and tell us you're leaving and then you don't leave, and then later it's like saying kwaherini nimeenda, and then next time you're coming out of the bedroom. No, you know. What do you mean? I thought.
No. If we were looking at church leaders and looking at the morality that we expect them to exhibit, it would be a different debate. But of politicians, to speaking wine and drinking water and vice versa, given the opportunity, they die and resurrect themselves every single day. How many politicians have we heard saying that certain things will happen over their dead body, and they are alive and well and kicking to date, and those things that they said would not happen happened? So this is a mild statement from Murathe saying he is leaving the party. Did he actually leave the party? The key thing is not what he said. Did he leave? The answer is that I don't know actually. Yes.
You
I
cannot tell.
No, I don't know. I don't know whether he left or not. But he didn't. We don't. Do we know of a report which clearly indicated that he had left? No. We have a report that tells us he had said he would leave.
He had come out to say that, I'm gonna
what
leave this
we are
party.
being subjected to here is, and remember the Tanga Tanga Keleweke noises that we heard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly it's come to a head. And clearly the implosion that some people had predicted is now coming to the public arena, and we can see what is happening. We saw it happening with some individuals who were in the communication arm of this particular government losing their jobs. I get that one right, I believe. And it was said that they were allied to the deputy president. Now we see people who hold senior positions in Senate and in Parliament facing the same sort of fate.
So here is a story published on the Daily Nation, 6th of January 2019. David Murathe resigns from Jubilee over bid against Ruto. Murathe made the announcement on Sunday while explaining the conflict of interest in his bid to prevent Ruto from vying for the top seat. He explained that it was no longer reasonable for him to attack Ruto, as they both sit in the party's National Executive Committee. Murathe also pointed out that his views on Ruto and his bid to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta are his own, so they should not be viewed as the president's. Regarding claims of an MOU between the two leaders, between the president and Ruto for the top job in 2022, Murathe said there was no such thing. Okay? So he made an announcement. In fact, there was even there's a video clip of him saying all these things.
I believe that completely. But tell me, if you resign from a political post, a party post, they are legal instruments. Should you not follow a certain procedure?
That's where we're coming from.
Yes.
See,
Was that done?
When a man says these things and he doesn't follow through, and then the man comes back and talks about other things, what should you believe? Should you believe him now or should you believe him then?
We should subject everything to questions as we're doing right now. Where do we stand on this matter?
He came out to say that he's quitting
The
publicly.
the Secretary General
He did
of
not
the party...
write. He did not write to the party organ saying, "Look, guys, I am leaving the
Then he
party."
didn't resign.
Right? If he did not write, then he didn't resign. So why was he telling us that he's quitting? Now, why is he coming to speak about all these things and saying, story 2 days ago, I am still the vice chairman?
Of course he is. You recall, Eric, in this very same studio, we brought up this issue.
Uhuru said no.
And we said, this is what we said. We said, look, when you read the papers, you must understand what you are being told and what they mean to communicate.
And also what you're not being told.
Yes, this now falls under political communication. Okay? Please do not take it to anyone's bank. Just hear it and then get on with your life. When the next statement is made, like now, hear it, get on with your life. Wait for the consequences, wait for the final results of all these utterances, then you will know where you stand. When politicians say we are going to build bridges and we are going to create rivers and we are even going to build houses for every citizen in the country, it's a political speech, don't believe it for even half a second. This is what we have urged our listeners to say. Please pause and ask yourself. Don't just take what is being said as gospel truth,
but also
especially
at the
from a
same
politician.
time demand accountability. And that's what I'm doing this morning. I'm basically saying, look, Mr. David Murathe, you called a media, you spoke and said you are quitting, and you gave reasons, right?
So he should have quit.
You should have quit.
Is that what you're saying?
This is the point.
Then there was no reason for him to go. And
No.
what if he decided that in the moment which he was saying
accountability.
in the moment in which he was saying these things, the circumstances then now changed
Then
later.
come back and
Or
say,
even a
I
thought
have
changed.
rescinded the decision. Come back and say, I have rescinded the decision. Don't say that you have quit and then you just go mum and then emerge a year later and say, you know what, I'm still the vice chairman.
Okay.
So why are you coming out publicly?
Look at this.
This is where
issue and ask
accountability
yourself
comes
a
in.
very
And this
simple
is the leader
question.
of a party that is ruling.
When
What does it tell you about that party?
When the vice chair of Jubilee Party made that statement early in the year, who was he addressing?
What do you mean?
Usually there's an audience that you're addressing with a statement. For instance, when the Senator Kipchumba Murkomen refers to Murathe as a dog, okay, the person he is addressing is Murathe, okay? And he has insulted him, or he has likened him to some canine, probably the rabbit variety. That is my that is my take on it, okay? And he has also said, this man is not in my league. Now, he's addressing Murathe. But he's also addressing staunch followers of the part of Jubilee that he belongs to tell them that we fear nothing.
Yeah.
And we also don't fear calling anybody names. The other person they are actually addressing is the president. Because Murathe is considered to be a close
friend.
associate of the president's.
His friend
And-
even.
Yes, these are the things that we keep hearing. So if you're talking to Murathe, and Murathe has also been referred to as a mouthpiece for the president, not just necessarily the party. So it is not difficult to figure out who this person is addressing. When Murathe was making that statement, at that point in time, what was happening? Was it not at the peak of the Tanga Kileweke backs
It
and
was.
forths? Yes, at the peak
it
of
was
it.
at the peak of when he was basically going around insisting that DP Ruto should not vie for presidency.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Him doing that.
Yes.
And then how he came out and said, you know what, because I really, really am opposed to my deputy party leader succeeding the party leader as president or even party leader, we have conflict of interest. We sit in the same, I don't believe that we should even be seeing one another eye to eye at any point. So I am the one who's taking the high road. I am quitting the party.
Okay, clearly he didn't quit, did he?
No, he didn't.
Now, we then ask ourselves why it is politicians expect us to actually believe what they tell us. You know, we've said that we haven't been hearing of them, but there are some politicians who have actually been active. There are parliamentarians who've actually gone to even parliament. There are senators who've actually been doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it can't be that all of them. But what is also clear is this. If politicians insist on making some of these outlandish statements and they think that they don't have a consequence, this is where they're wrong, because they do have
They
consequences.
do have consequences. And I think this is one of those very clear ones. You know, when a politician is going around making political statements in 6 weeks' time, in 6 months'
In
time,
6 months' time.
this is going to happen, and it doesn't happen, and then we just
Then
let
that
it
story is
pass.
tired, eh?
Right? And then another one comes and says, you know what, I have quit. And then later he says, I didn't quit. I was just joking. No, come on. No,
You
no,
actually
no,
took me seriously.
no. No way.
Okay. So
25 minutes to 7. Let's take a look at traffic shortly.
All right, let's take a look at what it looks like around the country. Starting off in Mombasa, it's really open in terms of the city, in terms of roads now, getting in and out of town and getting downtown. Not too bad at all. Into Eldoret and out of Kisumu as well, no issues. Roads are clean all the way in and out of the city, heading towards the airport in Kisumu as well. But there's nowhere you're going, so all right. Take a look then into Nairobi today. Traffic on Mombasa Road a little bit. We must understand that the road leading to the Inland Container Depot, the ICD, behind there is being worked on. So that means that a lot of the traffic that would normally use that road is now on the main Mombasa Road. So that's why you experience the traffic that you are right now and will for about an hour or so. There's a no-go zone for borders in Upper Hill, so quite a number of people are walking today, and we'll see how it looks on the roads in a short while. Looking good coming out of Westlands, coming off Figure Road, Langata Road and Jogo Road today. If it changes, we'll let you know. You let us know as well. Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter, so please do.
Spice FM, Malindi. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Uzazi ungali ipo.
That's today's proverb.
That is today's proverb.
All right. Let's continue with the headlines. Nation's headline. Indu.
Well, nation has stuck to COVID. Alarm bells as virus spreads to counties. So 2 stories that are linked one way to the other. Wear a mask or face arrest. The grace period is up. Tough terms and measures now. From today, you will be flouting the law if you're found in a public place, a matatu, a supermarket, or on the streets without a face mask. Police have been given the nod to hold you. And that's on page 7. Look into those details in a bit. But now, looking at the numbers, 216 people have been found tested positive in Kenya. And according to Health Chief Administrative Secretary Mercy Mwangangi, the virus is now domiciled across the length and breadth of our republic, from down south in Kilifi to Mandera in the north, and from the west in Vihiga to Kitui in the east. And if we're looking at the circular motion in which now COVID-19 is affecting Kenya, Mandera, Nakuru, Nyandarua, Mandera 6 cases. Nakuru, 5 cases. Nyandarua, 2 cases. Laikipia, 2 cases. Nyeri, 1 case. Muranga, 2 cases. Kiambu, 7. Kitui, 2. Kilifi, 10. Mombasa, 34. Kwale, 1. Machakos, 6. Kajiado, 2. Nairobi, 101. Nyamira, 1. Kisii, 1. Homa Bay, 1. Siaya, 2. Vihiga, 1. Kakamega, 2. Uasin Gishu, 2. Residents in 21 counties among the 216 with the virus in the country. And so now the number of infections in these counties are worrying the team combating the disease. According to Mutiambai, you will be arrested from today should you be found in public without a face mask. This is the message to Kenyans who have been taking lightly the requirement of wearing masks as one of the precautions against the spread of the coronavirus COVID-19. Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutambai yesterday said the grace period for adjusting the regulations given by President Uhuru Kenyatta has expired, and that anyone violating them would be taken to court. During the weekend, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe gazetted a list of hefty penalties against violators. I quote, use of public or private transport and public transport operators should wear proper masks that must cover the mouth and nose. They should also maintain a physical distance of not less than a meter. And in the Gazette Supplement number 41, which is what was put through and published, a person who commits an offence under these rules shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 20,000 shillings or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months or both. So the Kenya Police Service and the public has been given enough time to acquire masks and should begin enforcing the rules. So this is
mask
crunch time.
Every time, everywhere you step out of your house.
In public, yes.
But of interest, members of the citizenry of Kenya, whose duty it is to provide security, are also arresting themselves. What do I mean by this? We have a report on page 11 where a senior police officer attached to President Uhuru Kenyatta's escort team was arrested, a superintendent, no less. He, Prescott, we are told his name, he was charged with, his duty is to actually protect the president and the family. But what he decided was to argue with officers who were manning a roadblock, trying to put into effect the dusk to dawn curfew. He was put in, left, spent the night in prison or in cells, and was let go the following morning. But that article on page 11 also enumerates cases of this same nature in other parts of the country, where police officers, some in the company of civilians, who were arrested and taken to the cells for disobeying these orders.
Good.
Is that not a good thing?
It is.
Good. Nobody's above the law.
Nobody's above the law. Now, if you want to look at food, everybody complains about the fact that now we're going to be at home, so the amount of food we consume in that period. And I thought to myself, before I saw this story, you know, we I think we forget that when you're out and about, running about, taking care of your business, whether you're at your job, whether you're at your business, the amount of food you tend to consume is less that which you consume at home. So now that a lot more people are at home, the fact is that you'll be consuming more. I mean, it's just the way it's going to go. So then also brings in the fact that you're likely to spend more because you're at home. So this is why a lot of people have been complaining that we're spending a lot more money because, we're not leaving. Now, there's some relief for Kenyans over the price of goods. You will save 2 shillings for every 100 shillings you spend buying goods and services that attract value-added tax, VAT. This is after MPs endorsed President Uhuru Kenyatta's proposal to lower VAT from 16 to 14% and cushion Kenyans against economic shocks caused by COVID-19. The products whose prices are likely to come down slightly include electricity, sanitizers, detergents, newspapers, processed foods, phones, books, electronics, computer hardware and software. Most food items are already excluded from VAT and the prices will remain unchanged. But although they passed the 2020 tax laws bill, lawmakers warned that the common man may not benefit from the move as envisioned by Mr. Kenyatta. So,
and why is
that? We continue.
The MPs argue, first of all, the 2% reduction, right? When it comes to most food items are already exempt from VAT anyway. So you go to the market, you don't expect that your sukuma wiki will cost 2 bob cheaper or 2% cheaper.
Or that if you buy it for 50 shillings, you'll get more than you normally would.
It will not.
No, it wouldn't work that way.
Sukuma was not attracting VAT anyway.
In the first
it's
place,
only
so
processed
you're not going
like
to
unga and such, salt, oil,
sausages,
such processed stuff.
And how many? And I know Citi's saying how many people are eating sausages. Well, this is the thing.
The
common man is not really going to benefit from this, unfortunately. So we're still back at square one in terms of looking for stimulus, in terms of looking for buffer. It's not happening, guys. So even this food that we're talking, even this food that we're talking about that you need more of because you're at home, or that you're going to be required to be at home, you're still going to have to spend a pretty penny on it.
Let me try and be a bit positive here.
It's like you're really endeavoring.
No, not really, because this matter that I referred to regarding Top Cop being disarmed at curfew, the story goes on to explain that we have a deputy county commissioner, an MP, a judicial officer, a senior military commander, a former MP, a singer, meaning these cases involve Kenyans. And what this report is indicating is that from all walks of life, it doesn't really matter, meaning these curfew laws are being abrogated by everybody who has an opportunity to do so. And if you're talking about the disciplined forces, we are told that this particular cap is being taken by the National Police Service. But let me see the positive thing. It is positive that Kenyans can see that much as they are all represented in disobeying laid down rules and procedures, the consequences are also being suffered across board, almost, should I say, democratically. But on the positive note, every time we hear the government trying to put something into action, I want to look at it this way. Those are the baby steps of an attempt being made. Yes. So I will say, I will give it time to see how it will progress. But its inadequacy must be pointed out and said it is an attempt, we see it, but it's inadequate.
It's not enough.
It's inadequate. It must be called out and said, this is not enough. You have to do something that actually makes it work.
It's like saying, good start, guys. But let's see how we can ramp this thing up a little bit.
Yes.
All right. Food security crisis as pandemic and locusts deal blow to agriculture. The locusts are here.
It's being reported as what? News.
So locusts are.
They never left.
They didn't go. In fact, they you know what they did? You know, this is actually what happened in a football game. I'm talking about American football or even like volleyball right now. So what happens is that you play for a while and then the coach calls a timeout and then you come and you form a huddle. Now, in the huddle is when you're given instructions to come back a little stronger. This is a strategy that you're going to use. So what happened is that the locusts never really left the playing field here. They went and they formed a huddle and they've come back refreshed and ready to go. And the opponent, in this case, is not ready for whatever was discussed during the huddle. And we're looking at swarms of locusts that will come into the country right about in the next 2 weeks or so.
No, they are in the country.
No. Hold on. The swarms that are coming are 20 times worse than that which has been experienced over the last 4 months. Not 2.
So there are those
20.
that are hatching in the country,
There are those that are already here.
and there are those that are still
The
hatching
ones that
in
are
Somalia.
coming to join their brothers and sisters.
So what did they tell the others? Why don't they go to
These
some other
ones
country?
that
Why
are
they coming
here told the ones that are coming, Omo, there is food.
Same
Here.
route.
Come.
Same route. Well, if there's food, that's good news.
They're actually being
12
told.
minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store and get to subscribe to the Standard and access it from wherever you are in the world. That's the Standard e-paper app, Google Play Store, Apple App Store. Very good user experience, and you get to access the Standard newspaper shortly. I'll be telling you, if you're within the country, how you can get the Standard newspaper delivered right to your doorstep. The World Health Organization has said it is safe to touch, read, and handle newspapers. The Standard is printed with highly automated processes with little human contact, who have been provided with gloves, sanitizers, and masks to ensure delivery is safeguarded. So, you can still get the Standard delivered right to your doorstep, and it will be safe to use. Good morning, 10 to 7.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
10 minutes to 7 o'clock.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Wherever you are. If you're in Mount Kenya region, all the coast, you can call Benson and his number is 0702-905-780. That is 0702-905-780. Benson Gitao can organize for the Standard newspaper to be delivered to your doorstep. If you're in Rift Valley and Nyanza regions, Mark Odhiambo, his number is 0776-756-107. That's 0776-756-107. Mark Odhiambo will ensure that anyone who asks for the newspaper to be delivered to their doorstep within Rift Valley and Nyanza regions gets the paper. And if you're in the Nairobi metropolitan area, Anthony Mutunga of 0702-905-941, that's 0702-905-941, will ensure delivery within the Nairobi metropolitan region. Now, it's very clear since the cessation of movement was declared where the Nairobi metropolitan region begins and where it ends. We're taking a look at the headlines. The Standard has that, and then also talks about states to deploy 12,000 kits for mass testing. So mass testing is going to begin in Nairobi, Mombasa, Siaya, Mandera, which have been identified for phase 1 of the exercise, as the country records 8 more cases, taking the tally of those infected to 216. This story is on page 9, and it says The 4 counties have been singled out because of their risk factors, with the ministry further narrowing down on specific areas and institutions located in the regions. In Nairobi, the exercise will be conducted in the Kibra slums and all the quarantine and isolation centers. In Mombasa, Kenya Ports Authority staff will undergo testing. Now, you know the issue with KPA in Mombasa, right? Where we've already seen 2 people who worked at KPA die, and how many cases have been reported? I think there are 7 or so cases from KPA alone, just around the port. So the operations of the port have been affected significantly. In fact, even the management has even come out to say now, look, we recognize that this is an issue here. So all the staff at KPA are going to go through this testing. Which
Remember, KPA is the largest employer in that town. Huh?
Yep.
Number 1. Number 2, it means that they have the largest group of people who would consider affluent. They have spending power. And they're also the people who are likely to travel. They're the people who are likely to come into contact with other people other than the people whom they work with alone.
Yeah.
Yes. So the risk factor is not exaggerated. It is correct.
It is humongous. So
Yes, it is.
Health CAS, Massimo Wangangi, said they'll be sending 1,000 test kits to KPA based on the risk of transmission identified by the monitoring teams. 7 people at KPA have been confirmed to have the coronavirus disease. 7. Imagine, one organization. KNH in Nairobi is one of the institutions that has kicked off mass testing, so there is that happening at KNH. The government expects COVID-19 cases to go up once the exercise rolls out. So once we have now these 12,000 tests results coming in, the numbers will start going up.
And when
As
are these test
expected.
kits supposed to be rolled out? Do they say? I don't see it.
They actually don't say
But they will be rolled out.
But they'll be rolled out.
It helps if you actually give a timeline, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Speaking of timelines and things that are incumbent, the U.S. election, we see that some big endorsements came out yesterday. Bernie Sanders has, of course, endorsed Joe Biden for the White House. And then we saw the messages coming from former president, or Mr. President, Barack Obama, giving his nod to his friend Joe Biden. According to Bernie Sanders, I am asking all Americans to come together in this campaign to support your candidacy, which I endorse. Former U.S. President Joe Biden said, "You've been the most powerful voice for a fair and more just America. You've put the interests of this nation and the need to beat Donald Trump above all else. I am going to need you badly." So we see a working together of these two fellows, and then we see this much needed butter jam backing from former President Barack Obama towards Joe Biden. Huge deal here. It was expected. Everybody said this was something that they expected to happen. But when it actually did, I think what it did is that now put some roars through the belly of the Democrats and Americans.
Sleepy Joe has the ticket.
There it is. I mean,
Sleepy Joe has the ticket, and I feel very sorry for Bernie Sanders. I mean, really, second time.
Why?
after Hillary
Come
Clinton.
so close. Hillary
so
Clinton,
close, and then
the supporters of Bernie Sanders felt that they were really
shortchanged
at that time. And now again, this time, he was right there, front center of leading this pack, and then Sleepy Joe just comes in. You know, in a couple of months, Sleepy Joe comes in, and Sleepy Joe gets the support of everybody else, and seems like
party machinery.
That's it. Bernie Sanders has been played by the party.
This is why you hear what Joe
and
says.
now they're saying, you've been the strongest.
You
the
have
most
been the
vocal,
strongest voice. You've been the one who's wanted to down
matter.
Donald Trump. You have been.
So you let him then. So let him take the ticket.
Bernie Sanders is leftward leaning.
He is.
So the Democrats don't really like that.
He's a bit of a loose cannon.
They can't control the man.
It's not just the Democratic Party in the U.S. You ask yourself, in a time such as this one here, just look at our own politics. There are those who are known to be voices within a certain section of the party. Is that not so?
True.
They are loud, often very abusive. Now,
Obnoxious almost.
all that, all right? They are known to be such voices. Again, there are voices that are known to be voices of reason, despite all this.
Yep.
Now, in a time when there seems to be war, like this implosion we're seeing within the Jubilee, those loud, crude voices are the ones who tend to take center stage until something fundamental changes, and then they'll go completely silent. Or they'll change the tune completely. If they're Kenyans, they'll change.
if they're Kenyans.
Yes, if they're Kenyans, they will change. And suddenly they were misquoted.
Yeah.
They were misunderstood.
It was not them.
When he said dog, for heaven's sake, he was not referring to anyone
He
specifically.
meant ostrich.
Yes. You give
It's all a
analogies.
figure of speech.
I mean,
Yeah,
why
what's
can't we
wrong
understand
with
these
you?
simple, straightforward things?
I didn't actually mean dog. Who
No.
calls another person
How
a
on earth
dog?
can I call a respected
Why
so and so?
I am
dog.
resigning was just, it's heat of the moment.
Resigning? No. Those are the sort of things you should consider doing
I meant
when
I was
you have a
taking a
problem.
walk. What's wrong
Yes.
with you? You don't understand?
Precisely. So that is where we are at. Now, please remember, again, political utterances made by politicians must always be taken by a dollop of salt, not even a pinch.
You've said sack before.
Well, in this COVID-19, everything has to be used in moderation.
Even the salt with which you used to
Yes.
speculate. I love it.
Tough times. Let's spare everything. Frugal.
Yes.
Be frugal.
A little more than a pinch. It doesn't have to get to a sack.
As I come to the top of the hour, City, remind us today's proverb.
Today's proverb, usitukane mkunga na uzazi ungali ipo.
Usitukane
Directly-
mkunga na uzazi bado
But
ungali.
yes, do not insult a midwife, yet the childbearing is still ongoing, yet a child is still being born. Don't insult the midwife.
Be careful.
Be careful.
Keep it right here. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. A lot that we're going to be discussing today. Of course, we have Dr. Mercy Korir who will be joining us at 9. We'll be talking to Senator Johnson Sakaja later on. There's a bill that he has brought into Parliament to talk about reprieve for everybody during this COVID-19 period. Good morning. 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your
Nairobi's
life.
bringing back to life, it seems. Everybody's on the streets today. We still have that a little bit of a hold up on Mombasa Road right after Cabanas. Hopefully that will clear up soon. It's not likely to last for a very long time. Kangundo Road and Comarock Road's very clear this morning. It rained last night, so these routes are a bit slippery, guys. You want to be very careful. Border's not allowed in Upper Hill, so where you would normally take a border to get where you're going quickly this morning, you're going to have to walk. And they're saying no today. It's not going to happen. All right. Looking at Jogo Road, a little bit of a hold up coming out past Hamza, then getting towards the City Stadium roundabout. It's going to take you a minute, guys, getting into the CBD, but that'll be clear thereafter. Today seems to be awash with activity for some reason. Cabin fever probably got to a couple of people. Let's see what it looks like later, but for now, not looking so bad. Spiced FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know if you run into anything that other people should know about, and we'll make sure we spread the word.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
This is a
not
situation.
down.
So it's also
This
Kenya's
is the-
biggest conversation. Remember, you can watch us on our live stream, Spice FM KE, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. If you're in Malindi, you're on 97.9, Nyeri 90.9, Eldoret 96.7, Nakuru 96.0, 102.5 in Kisumu, Mombasa 87.9, and Nairobi 94.4. So, this man called Donald J. Trump, he has decided that, this whole thing of endorsing Sleepy Joe by Bernie Sanders and that Kenyan guy. I'm going to fight it very simply by taking a global headline. From today henceforth, no more funding of WHO.
It's fine.
And of course, it goes into say, we are blaming the WHO for where we find ourselves at this point. We are blaming the WHO for all the deaths that we are seeing. They underreacted. They did not give us proper advice.
His response clearly is based on his understanding that the US is the one country that the entire world depends on. This one, he's got this one particularly wrong. He's holding the wrong end of the broom here. The truth of the matter is this. If indeed they do withdraw, there are countries who've been waiting for such an opportunity and such a gap to have their say and to imprint their influence. That position will be taken up quicker than he imagines. And they will not let go of it once it is taken. America made that mistake with their structural adjustment programs, and I'm using the word here carefully, interference with IMF, World Bank, the lot of you, telling us poor Africans who clearly did not know any better, that we must behave ourselves like Sunday school children, otherwise they will not give us lollipops. In this case, it was money that they were supposed to be lending us. Not giving, lending, and which we pay back. And they carried on with this for the longest time. Then came China, and they invited presidents of this lovely continent of ours, and they went to China, and they had a few discussions, and everything changed. China was now giving us the very same things that America was giving us with all manner of conditions for both the living and the dead. And they were giving us with next to zero conditions. And so people rushed to China to get help.
Never in their lifetime did they think it would be possible that African countries who were so heavily dependent on their condition-laden aid would go to the Far East to look for help.
They didn't see it coming.
They did not.
He is speaking from that time gone by when that was the case. It's always the case when someone lives in a civilization that is really caught up in the throes of decline, and those who are the leaders don't seem to understand this. That you cannot keep conducting yourself as head prefect, laying down moral conditions that you yourself don't abide by to other people, so that this thing that you feel you have in abundance more than they do, that is the only way they will get it. When an alternative is provided for. Let me give you an analogy of Kenya. Kenya Post and Telecommunications, the telecoms aspect of it had landlines. Man, those people were a complete mess. You would get bills, it was a crazy system, but we didn't have a choice. It was a monopoly.
That was it.
Now, the moment cell phones came in, Telcom may not realize this, but they were predominantly responsible for the rush with which people went into handheld phones, because they figured we are moving away from those fellows. Hallelujah.
Whatever we're going to find there, we don't know.
Also,
but
for a
taking
majority
away
that
from
had tried
here,
for
better.
so long to
get.
apply, to get just this landline fixed. Go to Extelcom, make an application. Oh, our technicians are not coming to your region until next week.
And you're paying for it. Can you imagine?
And you're paying.
And you're playing those games.
It's
People never looked back. They never looked back, and they may not even know it. The moment you see Telcom, your mind just turns away.
Condition.
People suffered. They were supposed to provide a service which was being and they had a monopoly. Remember, monopoly. No competition, being paid for. They played around with it. Not that they have not recovered. They will never recover from it. America is chasing something. What they're chasing is a mirage. It went. It left.
It left a while ago.
That boat sailed a long time ago, and others came and also sailed.
And if you ask me, the game that Trump is playing now with these expressions that we are seeing about, it's like he was in the playground and somebody took my ball. And this is what he's telling the world. Somebody took my ball and I don't like it. He's using a lot of flowery English to say it, but that's essentially what
He's
it is.
essentially throwing a tantrum.
He's throwing a tantrum. He's sitting in the middle of the supermarket and throwing his feet up and down, waiting for his mama to come and get him. It's not going to happen in this case, unfortunately. Nobody really cares. And you know what? We can say all the things that we want to say over and over and over again, but at the end of the day, the US dropped the ball when it came to how they handled COVID. Clearly,
They did.
They did.
The unfortunate bit, though, is that as you're saying that it may not stick, it is sticking. There are very many people who are starting to believe, WHO and China were playing games. Yes, WHO allowed China to hide the numbers. How many articles have you come across that are trying to point a finger at China and saying, China in the very beginning of this COVID-19 underreported, mismanaged, and therefore it's a reason why this thing became a pandemic?
But it could very well be true. You have this situation you don't fully understand. You had SARS not very long ago. You've had other situations. Surely you're going to be bungling trying to figure out what it is you're dealing with.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you are lying.
In fact, the
you are simply
surprise-
trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the chagrin would come if you didn't mess up.
Yep.
If you didn't mess up, then we would ask ourselves,
So what did you
what's
know?
going on
What
here?
did
So
you
what
know?
did you know about this?
Yeah. What
Exactly.
exactly did you know?
So now, look, at the end of the day, the US did not expect this thing. It didn't even come knocking at their borders. It kicked the door down and got in.
And rushed
they
in.
did not expect that it would.
And there was a lot of back and forth between the presidency, the governors, everybody.
And even this United
Actually,
States,
it was not.
even this United States
wasn't
that's
in-
talking about
they
the
were not
fact
united.
that, no, they were not. This United States that you're talking about, we still have 8 states
Up
who
to
right
date.
now, who have decided, no, we're not closed. What are you, lockdown? Who?
Yep.
We're not closing our borders. We're still not dealing with this thing. The same United States who is talking about China did not report. The World Health Organization did not tell us. They got wind of COVID in January.
Yep.
In the first week of January, they had the information. Senator Cotton, who is a Republican senator, this very famous speech that he made. When did he make this speech?
The
He
guy with his
made-
conspiracy theories all over.
He started
Yes,
his conspiracy
yes,
theories in
yes.
January.
Yes.
So they had this information. However they chose to disseminate it, however they chose to
They
interpret it, was something totally different. Again, they talked about their US bases around the world. Never once did he mention the continental
They
US.
didn't think about what
because
to do
they
internally.
didn't expect that it was going to come to them. And that is the reason for the huge number of deaths that we are seeing. They didn't expect it to come to them. And even when it did, they thought it was going to be 1 case or 2 or 3.
It was a-
They
it
didn't
was a small
expect
time thing.
195,000 cases in New York City alone. They didn't expect
Do you remember
it.
that
And so they were
same
unprepared.
story?
They should stop
They
it.
tried to spin that same story in Italy and said that, are you aware that China has actually bought up most of the northern part of Italy? So you say, when did they start buying it? In January? Or was it
Yeah,
December?
they started joining,
That story of the Chinese export died in Europe. They tried it. It didn't.
It didn't
fly.
fly.
It didn't get traction. But if you go back
The 5G also.
again,
5G
Now,
masts.
essentially, if there were racist sentiments that the West, the white West, harbored against the Chinese, it has come out so clearly. Even if you're blindfolded, you'd be able to see it.
You can see it.
But consider George W. Bush, his administration, PEPFAR, and what they did in the fight against HIV.
Yeah.
It was a high point because they didn't hold back. There's this problem.
We're going to deal with it.
Let us forget whatever reason you want to give for it, but they helped, they gave money. It was money which, when utilized properly, changed health systems. Not so in this country,
Yeah.
but it changed systems. Fast forward it to Trump. You have a problem. Now that's where the leadership comes in, the people who support it. What do? Instead of dealing with the problem, you're busy spending energy looking
Pointing
for ways
fingers.
of blaming other people. Surely.
Deal with the situation that you have on the ground. You want to blame the WHO.
Passing
What
it
exactly
around.
is
Or
the
they pass
reason?
around quite a bit.
I
What
saw
exactly is the reason that you're calling out and saying that the World Health Organization did not share information with you, and that is the reason why you see the number of
took
deaths
time.
that you're seeing in stop it.
Actually,
We'll be playing a clip of what Trump said, and
Yes.
I'll also be telling. I saw a clip of an interview of Susan Rice, the former national security advisor in the Obama administration, and she was saying when we were living during the transition period
what is it
between
with this name Rice
Yeah.
and being
And national
Secretary,
security
yeah.
advisor.
Anybody, let's
Condoleezza.
continue. Yes, okay.
Any black woman who goes to that position must
Rice.
be called Rice.
Okay.
Right. Right. So, Susan Rice was saying when they were living during that transition period between the Obama administration and the Trump administration, there were a number of things that they did, and they were, showing them. They actually had a meeting that lasted 5 hours between the Obama cabinet and the new Trump cabinet. And they went through a few things. 3 things stood out. They were doing simulations and said, look, we have looked at one of the things that's likely to happen is nuclear war and some nuclear escalation. So we have some war games that we've come up with, and this is what we think that can happen and how we can prepare for that. The other thing is a pandemic, and the other one is a natural disaster, all right? So in terms of pandemic, they were saying we don't have one yet, but we are just looking at, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And if it happens during your tenure, we have even come up with a 196-page document on what the United States can do to prepare itself and deal with the pandemic. So she goes further to say she's very much aware that the US CDC was alerted about coronavirus in China in December. The US CDC alerted the US administration about coronavirus early January. White House was informed about coronavirus happening in China in the second week of January, and they took time. We made no major decision. Trump keeps saying that, you know what, I closed travel from China in January. But Condoleezza, Susan Rice says we got some 50,000 people still arriving into the USA, right? Even despite that lockdown. Anyway, January gone with the USA doing nothing. February, absolutely no activity. March is when they start acting. By March, by the time they're acting, they're catching up with a virus that's already in their country. So, look, it's about, and what I'm liking about this whole conversation is that as this thing is happening, as we are saying, okay, so what is the government doing? Also, there are people who are saying, let's take a look at what went wrong.
Yes.
Why are we where we are? This whole story of saying, let's support the government for what the work it's doing. Yeah, we're supporting the government,
fine.
but at the same time, we need to ask.
Let's call them out.
We need to ask.
There are things they should have done and they didn't do.
Should you have done? Why didn't you do it?
You know, Eric, as you're saying this, you need to just consider there's a country called Vietnam. Came out of the war in the 1960s, 70s, and they were no better than any other third world country. Economically, they moved to what you call middle income countries.
Yes.
Now, something that they've done that hasn't been heralded is they have been donating face masks to Europe when China wasn't able to provide. They have been sending medical staff to other parts of the world, including China, to assist the problems that they have. And do you know why? They have worked and they have a very robust healthcare system. And they've been focused on preventative care. And they focused on these community-based aspects of prevention, something that we have written papers on, we know about, but we know what we do with such things anyway.
Yeah.
And because of this, when the pandemic struck, they were not thrown into confusion. They knew exactly what to do because they already had a system. And they've been slowly working. They haven't quite gotten there as they would like. But this universal healthcare system, they've been working towards making it private and public funded. But they've been working towards it for the longest time, meaning they were prepared. Now, this is not a country that you talk about. Okay, they have a population of something like 89 million. There are very many people. They're almost twice the number of people that we are. But they've managed it. Now, it tells you what happens when you have a focused and determined leadership who understand. They understood where they'd come from. They understood what they'd suffered. And they realized we have to put systems in place that guarantee that our people. Nobody talks of Vietnam when you're talking about even the Asian tigers. You talk of Malaysia.
Everybody else.
You talk about Korea. You talk about... But you never talk of Vietnam. But here we are. And the other thing is, these things that we refer to as cottage industries, they're awash with them. So when it came to even making things like face masks, they didn't have a problem at all. Once they were told this is
just clear.
This is the WHO approved standard, they simply applied it. No complication whatsoever. These things that people keep saying cannot be done are being done.
They're being done all other parts of the world.
Yes, and not by big, powerful countries. No. Ordinary countries just being run by ordinary citizens of their country, and we can see the progress.
And then in this conversation, you can join in Spice FM KE on Facebook, that's Spice FM on Twitter, as well as Instagram, Spice FM KE. Good morning.
It's 17 degrees in Nairobi. Partly cloudy conditions. The sun is peeking through. However, showers will follow in the afternoon. Highs of 26 and lows of 16. Nyeri at 16 degrees is mostly cloudy this morning. Thunderstorms expected for the afternoon. Highs of 25 and lows of 16. Nakuru at 16 degrees is mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms expected there later as well, with highs of 26 and lows of 16. It's 14 degrees and clear skies in Eldoret this morning. It'll cloud up later though, however. Highs of 24 and lows of 13. Kisumu at 19 degrees is mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms and showers intermittently through the day. Highs of 29 and lows of 19. Malindi at 28 degrees is mostly cloudy this morning. It'll be a warm day, cooled down by showers in the afternoon. Highs of 32 and lows of 27. Mombasa 27 degrees is partly cloudy. 31 degrees the high today with showers in the afternoon. Kampala is cloudy this morning at 20 degrees. Showers have already started in some parts. Highs of 26 and lows of 20. Dar es Salaam is already experiencing scattered thunderstorms this morning at 24 degrees, likely to carry on throughout the day. Highs of 30 and lows of 24. In Joburg at 12 degrees, it's partly cloudy this morning, likely to go through the rest of the day. Highs of 18 and lows of 8. Finally, in Lagos, it's a foggy morning at 28 degrees. Showers expected in the afternoon, then with highs of 34 and lows of 26.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus. Everybody knows what's going on there. The inability of the WHO to obtain virus samples to this date has deprived the scientific community of essential data. New data that emerges across the world on a daily basis points to
20 minutes
the
after 7, that clip is
unreliability
courtesy of CNN. He spoke last night during his daily briefings on COVID-19 and the U.S. Federal government's response to it.
It's unfortunate that this move that's coming from them is likely not to cause a huge dent in how things are going to happen.
It'll impact everything else that the WHO is doing.
Yeah, sure. But I think that very swiftly you will see an uptake of this position by other countries who may have been waiting in the shadows or waiting along the lines to then pick up in terms of their contribution. There are many countries who've been making contributions towards health and have never been seen or heard or never been able to take a leadership or that kind of positionary role with the World Health Organization by virtue of the fact that the United States filled that hole.
Who has
Now,
the
if
money?
they're
Not
going-
failed, hogged it.
Hogged it. Now, if they're going to step aside,
Good.
you have a number of countries, it's okay. Step aside. You have a number of countries who would not hesitate.
Which countries are those
China.
right now, apart from China?
No,
China being one of
and
them.
Russia.
No.
So let's-
Russia maybe. The Russian economy is not as big as people.
As people think it is.
They're just very loud, and we remember them during the USSR days. But their consideration, Japan, Europe, believe me, that space is not going to remain vacant for very long.
Very long. And gone are the days where you could make such threats and then people would start to quake. Gone are the days when you would do something like that.
Eric,
By virtue of
remember,
the
You
fact
see an
how the
immediate
world.
reaction to this
I don't
Yes,
see. I don't see.
Immediate.
I see a today reaction. I
by
don't
somebody else saying that we're putting in the money through WHO.
Yes.
We'll pony up the funds. why
Eric,
not?
it may not even be today because the processes that one has to follow. Remember, this stranglehold, and I'm going to call it a stranglehold, began after World War II when America was actually Big Brother. They were instrumental in forming the UN. They were instrumental
They were
in
Baba
this.
Yao.
Yes, they were their collective father, okay, in everything. It's a position they've held unquestionably. Consider that even in NATO, they're the ones who had the big say. Why? Because, again, historically from World War II, they're the ones who had the might, political might. They are the ones who had the financial might.
Yep.
They're the ones with the military might. That is no longer the case. It's not. That pole position that they had has shifted. They may not have noticed it, but it has shifted.
I don't think this position will be taken immediately, and I also don't think that Americans halting of funding to the WHO, just like Trump had, given that threat again to the UN, is going to hold for long. It's a negotiation thing. It's just a way for him to divert attention. Now, attention will go in towards, global attention is America is accusing the WHO. Let's look at the WHO. Is it true? Is it not true? Diverts attention from what America could or should have done. After a certain time, they still get their money. WHO will still get the funding that it receives from
I think they're
the
looking.
United
It's
States.
clear that the U.S. in this case, notably President Donald Trump, is looking for recognition from the World Health Organization that actually, all right, you know what, we actually did mess
Yeah,
up.
what can we do for you now?
Yes. So should we publicly state that we messed up and we did not share information with you? Secondly, maybe we need to ramp up in terms of our finding of these samples towards finding a vaccine. Maybe we need to do that and really dance to this tune that you're asking us to dance to. That's what he wants at the end of the
Why are
day.
you ascribing so much intellectual capacity on this particular individual?
The guy just wants the WHO to say, yes, we cocked up. That's what he wants.
I also believe the same thing, City.
That's all he wants.
I think in the long run, he's looking at how is he going to be able to arm to his WHO to approve some things.
Yes.
Look at how, what is the process of approving vaccines and all.
Yes.
Right? So he's looking at the long game. In the long run, when we come up and say we have the vaccine, WHO, you're going to say, okay, immediately, don't question us. Whatever we want to do in the future, you will listen to us.
So he's leveraging.
He's leveraging that. Is the same thing that was happening with Ukraine.
Same.
Just withhold funds. We're going to give you money, but now we want you to play to this tune.
Look at what he did with his funds and with the pharmaceutical companies in his country.
Yes.
Did he choose everyone?
No.
He picked specifically those that work with him, those that support him. I think it's in the long run, he's basically looking at that. He's playing a leveraging game. WHO will still receive its funding, but it will be directly responsible,
Remember,
answerable to Donald Trump.
He can't halt the funding. Donald
And
Trump.
that's what I said. He can
He
make
can't
all of
order
this.
it.
And that's why
He can ask.
He can ask his administration. But what did he say? We're gonna put a stop to this until we figure out what's really happening.
he
We
actually
all
ca-
know what's
you know, he-
going
he
on
ac-
there,
he
folks.
actually
He
can't do
actually
that.
can't. It's something that has to go through. Again, like you said, it has to go through process. Questions need to be asked. And I said, okay, where? Because
Look,
bringing the initiative to
funding
start
has
this
been
in
put
the
in
first
force.
place.
Usually, it is their Congress.
It's Congress. It's an act of Congress.
Yes.
For
So
the
now,
funding to start in the first place.
to stop
so
it
if you're going
again,
to stop it,
you
you,
go
have
back
to
there.
go back to the same Congress.
And tell them you don't want to stop this thing.
And they're going to ask why.
Yes.
And they're going to ask what happened.
Yes.
And they're going to ask the reasons. If they're unfounded, sorry.
Eric, let me
it's
tell you
not
why
going to
I'm
work.
saying that this is a threat that may not work in. When you threaten often enough, people get tired of your threats. And then you give them an opportunity to look. Now, if you look at our papers, there's this talk about the government should give free this, free this. I'm actually not for that either. Make it affordable.
Let people buy.
Please. You know, there's something about removing dignity from people by offering handouts that people don't seem to understand. There are cases where you need to. The extreme cases of flooding, extreme cases of famine, you need to. But if that isn't the threat, please make it affordable. Let someone have the money to go and buy those things themselves. It is important for someone's dignity, especially at such a time when you're faced with something that is completely beyond you.
Yeah.
You need to be able to feel, you know,
At least there's something I could
I can do
yes,
this.
yes.
There's something I could do.
When you remove that dignity, you remove that will to even fight.
That's what. So you see the same thing happening with Trump. Now Trump is also fighting with his governors. The issue of May 1st. Open up the economy or not open up the economy, the argument back and forth. He was throwing out those figures of, look, 70,000 people die every year from the flu, right? Every year. Do you ever think about even closing one part of the economy? Because the flu season is coming? No, we don't. So now, yes, we've closed this season, right? So why can't we open the first of March?
Why don't we take an example of that so-called Western Hemisphere and look at, say, Italy? Are they coming out of the cold season? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Is the US coming out of the cold season? The answer is yes. Is Spain coming out of the cold season? The answer is yes. Have they dealt with COVID-19 conclusively to the point where it's no longer an issue? The answer is no. They are still struggling with it. So it's not necessarily a flu issue. It's not necessarily a cold issue. So much as you can give the numbers of the influenza, you knew the moment the cold season comes to an end, so does the problem of influenza.
Yeah.
This isn't it. Little detail. This isn't that scenario.
Yeah. This is a different case.
This is a different scenario.
Let's pick this caller. Peter calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Peter.
Hello, good morning. Latif, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You well?
I'm just maddened by this thing about Trump.
Why?
Now, what I'm saying is, America can withdraw whatever it wants about WHO. You know, Trump is just these are just diversionary tricks. He's unable to manage his affairs in his country about this COVID-19. Now, I think he's just passing the buck to the WHO. And then you see WHO is led by an African. The other day you called a doctor in America who said Trump doesn't listen to anyone.
Yes.
So me, my feeling is just Trump is just a disaster. I think he's just managing people like he's managing a corporate company. Those tricks he used to run a corporate company are the ones Trump is using to manage people. So my feeling is Trump is just wrong. For me, I support America can withdraw whatever it wants about WHO. There are many people who can support WHO. Right now, countries are trying to assist each other to survive. Trump is doing nothing. The other day you have had Cuomo complaining about Trump. He wants to manage how governors are managing the COVID-19 in America.
Yep.
Cuomo has said clearly, it is not about Trump. It's about people coming together, every governor trying to see what he can do. So me, I think for me, I really support Trump. America can withdraw whatever it wants about WHO. There are many people who can do it. Many people who can do it.
Peter, is there merit in looking at WHO's conduct over the last 6 months?
Over the last 6 months?
Yes, especially with the outbreak of coronavirus, as this COVID-19. Is there merit in saying, well, okay, everything else is happening. Let's look at how did WHO manage this, information-wise and everything else-wise. Is there merit in that? Because that's what Trump is saying. Let's halt this. Let's look at what WHO did during this pandemic.
For me, it's not about what WHO did. And then you see, WHO is also limited. For example, COVID-19 rises up in China. WHO might not do so much. WHO is a world organization. It's not a country organization. So for me, that doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. By the time WHO sits to go and assist, let's say, people in China, this thing is already spreading out. For me, it's not about WHO managing information or anything. WHO is a world organization. But I think those are just diversionary tricks. Those are just diversionary tricks of him unable to manage his things in America. Yes.
Thank you very much, Peter. I feel like you're in traffic. Are you in traffic?
Yeah, a little bit.
Where are you?
I'm Thika Road.
How is it looking this morning?
It's okay. It's fine. I'm around GSU. All is fine. All is fine there.
Coming towards the city or leaving the city?
Coming toward the city.
Okay. Thank you very much. We wish you all the best in traffic.
Thank you.
And let's take a look at the rest of the roads shortly. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Join the conversation, 0719-012-600. Also join the conversation on our social media handles, Spice FM, KE, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Good morning.
A little bit of a hold up on the Mombasa road because you see the roads inside are being sorted out right now. It is going to hold for a little bit, but it should be fine. All right, yes, we see a little bit of traffic here and there on Thika Road as well, but that'll open up in a bit. Not many in terms of people on the roads this morning. Gong Road behaving very well today, as is Langata Road, coming off of Uhuru Highway and then getting well into Westlands today. Not an issue. No issues that as we see them whatsoever, looking good. Remember that you need to have your masks on in public transport, in public areas, anywhere you're going this morning. Do that and sanitize, maintain social distance. Those are the messages of the traffic this morning. Spice of MKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see, guys.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
27 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. As we move into other conversations, let's just come back into this one for Trump just a little bit. 14 hours ago, he tweeted about New York Governor Cuomo. Cuomo's been calling daily, even hourly, begging for everything, most of which should have been the state's responsibility, such as new hospitals, beds, ventilators, etc. I got it all done for him and everyone else. And now he seems to want independence. That won't happen. The fight with governors is ongoing.
Maybe I wouldn't really have an issue with this whole World Health Organization thing if he looked at a global approach and a global effect. Because he's calling out the World Health Organization in its response to how now they have been able to deal with things concerning COVID as a country, as the United States, not as the globe, not as the world, where even in Europe, where they're close allies of Italy, France and Germany have been affected by this thing. They're not even talking about it being an issue.
Let's come
there
together and say let's
where,
take this
what
matter
has
to the,
happened.
to the United Nations and say,
and
oh, look,
discuss this matter in terms of the World Health Organization response. No. It's about the fact that they see something having hit the US so hard and they didn't even really see it coming. That is where the issue is. But if it had been a collective issue and saying that this is something that we're worried about as a globe and etc., maybe I'd even listen to it or use a dollop of salt, as CT has said. But no, I actually don't. I don't see this as anything more than a get back. He's throwing a tantrum. He's lost his ball in the playground and he needs somebody to give it back. This one, no.
You know, one of the reasons why some of the vaccinologists or organizations that focus their attention on just vaccine production have been able to move so swiftly is because the Chinese cracked the genome, the genetic makeup of this particular virus. They shared that information. And because they shared that information, it was easy to use information that they had on other viruses, consider other known drugs that have been approved, consider what has been possible to come up with now what you can look forward to and what you can work on and easily eliminate what you don't need. China has even taken the lead in the early trials that are actually being tried on human beings. Okay, so when one says China is doing nothing, with these matters, we're talking perspective here. Trump isn't doing anything that any politician who has been caught with his pants down would not do. He is not doing anything strange. No. The first thing you do is, as the previous caller mentioned, man, throw attention somewhere else, okay? Unfortunately, the coronavirus isn't waiting for you or for a narrative to sort of like gain traction.
No.
It's moving and moving and moving, and it's remaining center stage. So it is surpassing whatever narrative you have. That's the unfortunate thing. There are very few countries on this planet that have the research capacity for anything that may be referred to as medical, whether it is pathogens, whether it is parasites. America has divisions within CDC, and they have other institutes within the National Institute of Health that deal with nothing but these specific. Yes, one of the things that Trump first did when he came into power, he slashed the funding.
Yes, he did.
So let's go back there. So when you're talking about their own capacity to do these things, he himself hindered that capacity when he came into power, if you recall. And he slashed. Forget funding to other parts of the world. Their own.
Their own.
It was a big fight. It was a big issue. Now, when you cripple the research capacity of your own organizations, how then do you expect them or want them to be able to cope with a problem of this nature? Now, remember, this same CDC have a surveillance unit or surveillance section. My friend, what they do is look at patterns. They bring in people who understand these things and they forecast. And they usually have a fairly clear idea of what can happen.
They know.
Now, you have that in country and they advise you and you don't listen.
Susan Ray says, the former administration had already worked on this thing and left a complete document.
And said this.
In the event of a pandemic.
This is what you do.
You can go with this. Or at least even modify it. Just take it. Just take it and...
This is what you can do. Here is your blueprint. This is what you need to do.
There's a man who's called Brett McGurk. He's a former envoy. He served under Bush, Obama, and Trump. He left the Trump administration in 2018. He has tweeted and said, for the U.S. to have one of the worst domestic responses of any developed country in the world and then cease contributions to WHO in the middle of a raging global pandemic is an embarrassment, a sign of weakness, panic, and scapegoating. It's also endangering American citizens. 30% of countries around the world have no COVID-19 response programs, and they depend on the WHO for assistance. The US is not about to fill this gap, so more people will die, and the virus will spread in order to deflect from Trump's negligence. The effect of what Trump is trying to do is that, well, the countries that depend on WHO are now not going to get the assistance from WHO because as WHO will not have the capacity.
Eric, if you remember, let's take two cases of two countries, okay? China and South Africa.
Yeah.
During apartheid, there was a complete blockade. The world decided these fellows are mistreating their fellow citizens. We're not going to be with them. Do you know what happened? Man, South Africa grew and grew to the point where they had nuclear capacity.
Yes.
That's what happened. The internal capacity, the people who were causing the blockade had not figured. These guys already had capacity. Now, they were not distracted by you. They focused.
Now they focused inward.
This issue of blockades, again, in the form of sanctions, America has used it as a tool for the longest time.
Forever.
Did they not use it in China for the longest time?
They
Yes.
did.
What was
China
the
was
outcome?
sanctioned for a very long time.
What?
The
China
outcome
became a
is
powerhouse.
what we have now.
China became insular, and then what happened after that is that China then overtook you
Yes.
as the global leader.
So it hasn't hit Trump that this method isn't working.
it isn't working.
So you actually imagine, and how many other countries? I give an example of Vietnam. Do we even fully understand the capacities of those so-called Asian tigers? They don't shout about it. Though the world changed, it moved on and left America where it was. And Trump has stayed put and is still talking 1960, 1970 rhetoric, 1980. The guy hasn't even come into the 21st century yet with his rhetoric. People moved on. I don't know why he doesn't get it. By the time he gets it, it'll be a little too late for America. That position of Big Brother went. Do you know why it went? You cannot manage your partners on the globe, meaning other human beings, with the disdain that he's been displaying, and you expect people will tell you,
People are not going to sit
even
take
if
it
it
lying
does not
down.
help,
No,
keep it.
Keep it.
Kaa nayo.
Yes, please, keep
We
it.
don't
It is
need
okay.
it.
We
It's
don't
okay.
need it.
You know, they directly tell you, kaa nayo.
Yes.
I know there's even more news. A story on the Washington Post this morning says, so you see Trump is, basically Trump has made sure that during this COVID-19, he's campaigning. Whatever happens, I'm going to be in the headlines. Bad, good, I'm going to ensure that I'm on the headlines. Not Cuomo, not anybody else, me. So the Treasury Department has ordered President Trump's name to be printed on stimulus checks that the Internal Revenue Service is rushing to send to tens of millions of Americans, a process that could slow the delivery by a few days. It'll be the first time that a president's name appears on an IRS disbursement, but the president is not an authorized signer for legal disbursement by the U.S. Treasury. It is a standard practice for a civil servant to sign checks issued by the State Treasury Department to ensure that government payments are non-partisan. So you see the way we've been seeing governors here
Putting their faces
putting
on
their faces
sanitizers
on
and jerry cans.
sanitizer. Trump,
On checks, no less.
you're getting a check from the government. Trump's name is there.
Does he not see?
Remember who
Yes.
gave
Remember
you
who did
this.
this for you.
Exactly.
Remember.
But does he also not see that notoriety can bounce back on you? Because those checks will, the novelty of it will be wonderful within the first week. This is not even a month. By the time we get to the second and third week, they'll be saying, this thing is not enough. And who do you think they're going to blame?
Trump.
Precisely.
I don't think I don't think he minds taking that blame.
Unfortunately.
So you want us to talk about that conversation? Yeah. By the way, Obama left me empty coffers.
I had
I've
no
given
money.
you everything that I could.
Obama will do.
I have done.
It
goes back to
Obama had
Obama.
taken center stage when it came to the blame game for the longest time. China is just the new kid on the block. WHO, the new kids on the block. Remember,
Governors also.
yes. So essentially, when a man is amassing as many enemies as he possibly can from within his own boundaries and outside, what does it tell you about the strength of his leadership? He's amassing them. He's just creating new enemies every single day. His campaign card has been what a terrible president Obama was. Unfortunately, in so doing, you're making people remember the Obama administration. They'll remember Obama had wanted us to have Obamacare.
Obama had warned you 5 years ago Obama said this thing about, you know what, as a country, we should actually be prepared in the event that a pandemic comes that could be airborne. Sound familiar? We need to at least invest in taking care of our people, taking care of our borders. We need to do something. We need to make sure that we release enough funds right now. It's not a bad investment to have, because we could see something that, like the Spanish flu, could happen again in our lifetime, in another 5 years, in another 10 years. Something like that could happen. He said this in 2015. He did. And he said, you know what? I'm calling on you to back this, because it's possible that something like this could happen in the future. And we need to be prepared. The same Obama. He said it. He did.
But remember that we actually do have an understanding of some of these conditions and the frequency with which they've happened even historically. Epidemiologists, instead of just understanding what is current in their field, also go back into history. So this isn't some strange science that requires supernatural powers. It's something that is understood, and you can be told with a certain degree of certainty that, you know, this is what is likely to happen, and they'll tell you why. Global warming, climate change, comes with many other changes as well. Not complicated. If ice caps are melting, what do you think is going to happen? The sea will swell. It's not, again, complicated. If you have a situation where you have longer rains than you've anticipated, drier spells, again, that change. What will happen can be anticipated. Remember, very, very early in this particular program, remember we talked about climate change. And we talked about the ice age, remember? If you go far back into history, and we have the technology to do this, it is not difficult to tell what happened when and how it did, and the aftermath. So using modern technology and the understanding of history, people have been able to project and say, you know, folks, this is what we need to consider. Go back into history. On this very continent in Egypt, these fellows harnessed the Nile. They understood. Before the Aswan Dam and all these fancy dams,
They knew what to do.
yes, they did. They built water pans. They built dams. They made sure that that water was utilized not just for farming, but also during the times, because they knew there were cycles of famine. They knew. Those who read the Bible will have read about it. Okay? They knew. And you know why? They were an extremely successful civilization. Some of the things that we're talking about now in terms of harnessing that water, the Egyptians were already using it.
They were doing it.
They were. They knew what to do with excess water. In short, we're not dealing with situations that are new. Not really. What is new is that in the face of so much development, there is so much unpreparedness. That's what's new.
Yep. And even in those days, when there was some cases of unpreparedness, somebody's head.
Oh, heads rolled.
Somebody's head rolled.
It rolled. It wasn't many
so
heads rolled.
we don't
yes.
have water.
Who's in charge?
Yeah. I want his head.
Yes.
It's very clear. So do your job.
And
Your job is to prepare, you prepare. This thing of saying that we should praise people because of what they're doing now, and yet they miss some points of preparedness.
They must be called out.
No.
They must be called out. They must be called out. You know, when you have flooding, you know that's plenty.
Yeah.
Now, how do you harness this plenty? How do you make sure that this plenty is of, because you know it's going to end?
Yeah, it's going to end.
It will end. And then when it ends, you won't have enough of it. So what do you do to ensure that this plenty is harnessed?
So we can do something with it.
We have bumper crops, bumper harvests. All this time you're telling me that we don't have technology to ensure that the grain is sufficiently dried and kept in storage so that it can last longer.
Yeah,
We're saying we
without
don't-
aflatoxin.
Yes, we've had it. Traditionally, people did this for the longest time. There was no aflatoxin.
Yeah.
No.
What they used for manure was cow dung and animal dung.
Yeah.
That's what they did. All we're saying is that, you know, we have situations that people keep talking around in circles, and yet they're situations that mankind has had for the longest time, and they've dealt with and they've managed. Suddenly now we cannot manage these things when we can even foretell with certainty this is going to happen at this point in time. If we come back to Kenya and this COVID-19, this is a plea. Could those in government stop their usual squabbling as to who should steal what and at what time and how much? This is a time when you really must put the resources that we have to the use of the people. And these people include you. You're not excluded from this equation.
This is also the time. Let's not plead. There are people who make money from our taxpayer, from the tax that we pay, to be watchdogs. This is the time for watchdogs to do their job. to ensure that people who may be scheming, people who may be fighting and squabbling over who can get what or make something out of this COVID-19 period are kept in check.
Yeah.
Because with the absence of that, the thugs are going to run amok. And we're already seeing stories of, people who are already conniving and scheming and making a lot of money.
And we are seeing experts who have been brought in to fight this thing being ignored completely by the mandarins in these various ministries. And then for them, it's business as usual. And this is where the DPP, the DCI, and the Capital Commission, this is where, this one they must come in and they must actually do what they need to do.
Parliament too, and the parliamentary committees as well. 12 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're still looking at, now we're coming back to look at the country and our preparedness, and also comparing with what America has been doing and what's the politics that's happening in America. In the next hour, from 8 to 9, we'll be talking about social protection and the kind of measures that have been taken and how they can impact us. We'll be speaking with Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja. He has a bill that he's proposing some things to happen. We'll be talking to him about it. Keep it right here.
24/7. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If there's one thing we've learned as a country from moments of great crisis, it's that the spirit of looking out for one another can't be restricted to our homes or our workplaces or our neighborhoods or our houses of worship. It also has to be reflected in our national government. The kind of leadership that's guided by knowledge and experience, honesty and humility, empathy and grace. That kind of leadership doesn't just belong in our state capitals.
Barack Obama endorsing his former Vice President Joe Biden to take over as president.
Have we ever had a situation in that country where a former president has not supported his deputy if the deputy
Or
wanted
somebody
to aspire?
in their party.
Yes. Have we ever seen such a situation?
Never.
This was expected. It was not a matter of if, it was just a matter of when it would come out. It was expected. And then, these guys are bros, man. The bromance was real in
Someone
this
is your
case.
deputy for what?
Yeah, and
8
they were,
years?
For 8
yeah,
years.
and then they were friends.
2 terms. And
They were
friends.
friends.
They were
So it's
pals.
not surprising that he's come out and said this, that he would back him for this position, And
Bernie Sanders should have stood as an independent.
he should have. He should have.
Because some of the things Bernie Sanders says make sense.
And all of them are even acknowledging that. Even Obama acknowledged Bernie Sanders.
Biden himself. said
Biden
he
himself said Bernie Sanders. So why not just let the
No,
man take
no,
it?
no, 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 no. That is not acknowledging Bernie Sanders. That is acknowledging that Bernie Sanders has a serious following.
Yes.
And you cannot dismiss
It's
that
appealing
following.
to
Yes,
Bernie
it's
Sanders
appealing to
followers.
Yes. His following was substantial. Yes.
But there's a bit that is quite of interest even to us as Kenyans. The first part of Obama's words where he talks about what this thing has taught us is to look inward. Just listen to this.
If there's one thing we've learned as a country from moments of great crisis, it's that the spirit of looking out for one another can't be restricted to our homes, or our workplaces, or our neighborhoods, or our houses of worship. It also has to be reflected in our national government.
There you go. The spirit of looking for one another. It's not just, local harambes, neighbors. It must also be reflected in our national government. The spirit of looking for one
there's
another, the
one
spirit
thing
of
we've
thinking, all
learned
right,
as a
so
country
what
from
is it that we
moments of
can
great
do to
crisis?
ensure that as
It's
few
that the
people as
spirit of
possible
looking out
are
for one
impacted?
another
Not just
can't be
dying,
restricted
but
to-
also any other impact out of this COVID-19. What can we do? Takes us back to what City you were saying. There are people already who are squabbling, and those are people who are in national government, who are in government. They're already squabbling because their main focus is what can I make?
What can I
Yes.
make?
How do we
What can I
control
get
all
out
these
of
billions
this?
that are in the system?
Pesa ya COVID.
How do we control it?
Tutaikula wapi?
Yes.
It's not even controlling for power's sake
No,
or for influence.
No.
It's controlling so that it comes to your pocket.
Directly.
Directly to your pocket. Who are you going to ensure is getting this contract to work on the PPEs? Which company is going to be given the deal to get food and food rations to the people? Are we going to allow this thing that Jen Karuku and her team are saying we're going to be sending cash directly to people's
I'm sure that
pockets?
is being, why it's delayed, I'm sure that thing is being fought.
Why?
even now.
Do we want to do that? Money goes to people's pockets and then they go and buy. So
Yes. Then how do
then
we
how do we make
how are we going
money
to
out
make
of
money?
this? We want to distribute the food ourselves.
We also want to distribute the money ourselves. And we know how well that has worked.
We've seen it.
Yes, with the Wazes and with the Walemavu, we've seen how it has worked, haven't we?
The cash transfer to the vulnerable people in the country. I mean, this is a program that was started during the Moi Kibaki era.
Yes.
It's still ongoing. They're supposed to be receiving 2,000 shillings, at least 2,000 shillings every month.
I like the way you said supposed to be,
Yeah,
because the
supposed to.
reality of it is that it doesn't happen. with
All you
enough
need to do is
frequency.
have somebody
very many- there are
who
many
is someone you
delays.
know
Yeah.
in that category,
Yeah.
and just
Ask them
just
if they
follow
receive it,
follow up
yeah.
with them.
Let's ask them.
You'll be amazed at the disaster that this particular process is.
And yet, if you go back to, like the ministry, it's Labor and Social Services that worked on that, created an entire program, went and reached out and registered the people who are in need. And they did a whole vetting using community mobilization.
Or they were vetted.
That was done very well. So the number of people
Numbers are known.
is clear.
And where they are,
And
known.
where they are is clear. Bank accounts were opened using banks that have branches across the country. Equity, KCB, and the rest. Open a bank account, money shall be deposited there, and then you shall be told. All that is done.
If you have a phone, you'll
Yeah.
get a message telling you it is so.
Does the money come?
And if it comes, after how long?
After how long?
Yep.
Even
And
the
how
2,000,
much?
they'll tell you pay 500 and then wait to give you the remaining after a minute.
It's something that we may even speak about in mirth, but it's disastrous.
It's a shame. Come on.
It's immoral.
It is wrong. It is wrong. As it is, you would think that, certain vulnerable people in society would deserve a little bit more than 2,000 shillings, no? And then even that small one that you should be able to give them, it now becomes a tooth-pulling exercise to even remove that one. If
And yet
you
it's
can
budgeted
remove,
for, by
it's
the way.
budgeted
It's not-
for,
it's not-
and you're
it's not
removing
there.
money out of the hands, you're removing sustenance from the hands of your most vulnerable in society, then you can remove food from the mouth of a child. And then you ask yourself the regard that you have for the people of the country that you
individuals actually
lead.
care? Do you think it even, just forget a flashbulb moment, do you think they even pause to consider this? They don't.
No.
They don't. They actually don't.
When those people die, we'll contribute harambes to bury them.
We've had people calling in here to tell us that this money or this food that is donated, please don't use lay down government processes. We never get that food. You know why? It's sold.
And that is why, because if we're going to talk about social protection and what individuals are doing, I mean, if you look at why is it then that you ask yourself, anything that doesn't have any kind of government taint works so well?
Look,
People, if we say this is the money I have 10,000 and I'm going to feed 5 families and I give 2,000 per family, they actually receive the money
Yep.
and you save them from some kind of hunger and shame. You do it. It
And
is
they go and
seen.
buy from
they
their
go,
local
they
shops.
buy food. It is clear.
Food which
this
they
thing
believe they
has
need.
happened. Kenyans give money. It is clear where this money is going.
Yes.
No government intervention whatsoever, but it works very well. Why is that? Enter government, even 2,000 shillings cannot come out. Ask ourselves, these are the people that you constantly put into power every 5
you know,
years.
over 15 years ago, there's a friend of mine. He is a marine biologist. And in the course of chatting, he told me something which we just chatting. It sounded innocuous, but, that man understood it far better than I did. He told me, the more I look at our country, the more I realize that if these politicians wanted, they would do very well. And I asked him, what do you mean? He said, ask yourself a simple question. What really do you need a politician for on a daily basis? I said, well, they go to parliament, make laws. I said, okay, do they make laws every day? I said, no. So then why should we pay them every day? We have consultants. Why don't we just ask them for the time we need them to do certain things? We come in, do this thing, and then you go back
And then go.
and do other things that you were doing even before.
So if we're doing a sitting allowance, it's sitting allowance, no salary.
No salary for the 2 months when you're doing it. After that, go away,
Bas.
do whatever it is that you're doing. Now, it was a social conversation. But unfortunately, this man has been proved right more often than I would like to admit. That the very usefulness that we think was supposed to be there isn't.
Today's proverb, as we get to the top of the
Today's
hour.
proverb, usitukane mkunga na uzazi ungali ipo.
Usitukane
Mkunga.
mkunga na uzazi bado ungalipo.
Yes.
8 o'clock, good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so not much going on today. Thika Road looking good now. It has opened up from what we saw a while ago. So fuel prices should have come down as of today. Hopefully we'll see a reduction in transport fare as well. But we'll wait because that could be a pipe dream right now. Okay, so that could affect traffic on the roads. Not much in diesel, but maybe, petrol. So we'll see in a bit if that will come down. One thing I have to remember, well, you all have to remember, guys, public places. And now this means whether you're in your vehicle, personal vehicle, or whether you're in public service vehicle, you need to have your mask on, and this affects traffic. So please, they could stop you and ask you why you're not wearing one. And remember, it's not because it's a directive. You could save lives, your own and those of others. All right? You see anything anywhere where you might be stuck, do let us know. Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. The roads are looking good. If you see any hold-up or accident anywhere that we share information on, please don't hesitate to do so.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair.
Good morning, and thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, Malindi 97.7. Our live stream is up. We are broadcasting to the world on www.spicefm.co.ke. Wherever you are in the world, watch us on YouTube. Spice FM KE is our channel, or on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We are also live streaming on Twitter, Spice FM KE. Now let's talk about social protection. We have discussed this a number of times. Yesterday, the Jane Karuku-led fund launched its operations, and they said that they want to pilot giving out some cash transfer program to vulnerable people, right? So people will receive some cash on their phones, and then they can use that to go and buy food in the local markets. That also keeping the local economy moving and robust. Then there's also a bill that has been published, and this is the Pandemic Response and Management Bill, sponsored by Senator Johnson Sakaja. It talks about a number of things. People have complained, one, so loss of income because of job losses, or loss of income because of pay cuts from your employer, or loss of income because of no business if you're running a business. There are those people now who are saying loss of income because I'm a landlord and I'm not getting, my tenants are not paying and they're not able to pay. Or tenants are complaining and saying the landlord is still expecting us to pay. And yet we really can't afford. We need to have this conversation. So Johnson Sakaja's bill is trying to address all these matters and saying, so what is it that the country can do to respond to this pandemic? We'll be speaking to him at about 8:15 to understand exactly what the bill is all about. But the story that appears in the Standard today on page 6 says, Kenyans hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic will be exempted from paying rent, servicing bank loans, and the utility bills shall be waived. A bill before the Senate proposes. The Pandemic Response and Management Bill 2020 also proposes that Kenyans should not be laid off or coerced to take pay cuts by their employers, and those doing business will not be mandated to pay for trade licenses and land rates. The Senate bill, sponsored by Sakaja, who is the chairman of the Senate Special Committee on COVID-19, also seeks to provide measures to mitigate the effects of the pandemic and provide a mechanism to cushion those that may be adversely affected. Some of those measures, I think, first of all, that intro to that story is something that I'm not sure that this is what Sakaja intends to do. That Kenyans will be exempted from paying rent, servicing bank loans, and the utility bills shall be waived. Hey, this is one of those dangerous lines to go with.
It's populist.
When you say exempted from paying rent,
It's populist.
it is populist, and I don't think
And it's harmful.
the body of the bill does not say that. Actually, it talks about other things. It says if you're a tenant and you feel that you cannot afford to pay rent, you ought to reach out to your landlord. So tenants who may not be able to meet their contractual obligations shall give a notice in writing to their landlords or contracting party that they are not able to pay the rent because of the pandemic. Upon receipt of a notice, the contracting parties shall enter into an agreement on how the tenant shall meet their obligation at the end of the pandemic. So basically it's saying, talk to your landlord, and your landlord then is expected, obligated to listen to you and obligated to tell you, all right, so this is how we can work it out. Not
Obligated
that I'm
to listen to you,
shall.
but not obligated to do something about
Shall.
it.
Shall. Obligated to do something about
Okay.
it. You
So
can
not
enter
just
into
have
an
a
agreement.
conversation.
Yeah. I'm not sure, though, to what extent. Because your landlord can tell you, no, look, yes, so I hear you. What I want you to do is, if you've been paying me 20,000 shillings as rent, I want you to pay me 19,000 shillings. The 1,000 shillings, once this COVID-19 is over, you will still repay. Or, don't pay me for those 3 months, but then you still owe me 20 times 3, 60, which we shall work out how you shall meet those arrears in future. Now, how to enforce this, how to make sure that this works, I'm not sure about it. How does this, what is the government's role in ensuring that this works? Contract between two parties that are, just individual parties. I'm not sure how it works. These are things that we need to understand, but it's a conversation that we must have.
Well, I think from the very beginning, we need to look at how these things. This is the thing. Sometimes we want to put. You want to think about how it would be in an ideal situation, because the ideal situation would be just that, right? To say that I can come in and have a conversation with you and I say, according to the current times, I'm not able to do this because I've gotten a pay cut. I've gotten sacked. I've been relieved of my duties because they can't keep me on board, right? The ideal situation would be then to set certain things in place. Now, all of those things that are being set in place, again, in an ideal situation, are regulated to the T. Whether it comes to landlords and housing and things like this, in an ideal situation, are regulated. That you put certain things in place to make sure that they adhere to at one point or another. That if I'm not going to pay rent, or if I'm not going to pay my power bill, or I'm not going to, those things have already been regulated. And there's somebody who says, these are the ways in which we're going to do this And apart from just saying, these things are actually followed to the letter. So there's a system already in place whereby if anything comes along the line, you would then be able to plug into this thing already. Just taking landlords, for example, which one are you going to now look at and say, we're going to deal with this cadre of landlords and tenants and then not deal with the other? Because you have people who would live in the so-called high end who also have been affected, right? They receive pay cuts and they're not able to do that anymore. Then you have people who pay rent of 2,000 shillings and don't have a job and are not able to pay across the board because there's no regulation across board for landlords in this country. How are you then going to be able to plug in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Everybody be on board and say, bring this into the place. Or is it going to just be, I know, yes, we're going to have a conversation in a few minutes with him, who is the proposer of this bill. However, it just seems that there needs to have been an operating system in place already. And I think, this is an opportunity to
There's
create
actually a
such.
law called the Rent Restriction Act, all right? So it talks about and also establishes a tribunal. If you have a disagreement,
A dispute.
or a dispute with your landlord, you can go to that tribunal. So I think these measures give you something with which to go to the tribunal and say, look, I followed the procedure because this is what we discussed with the landlord, and then the landlord did not listen to me. I went and said, because of COVID-19, I am facing financial difficulty. I will not be able to meet my obligation to pay rent. Now, if the landlord does not respond to you, then you can actually go to the tribunal and say, look, I was unable to pay rent because of this and the other, and the landlord did not listen.
And oddly enough, that tribunal tends to favor the tenant.
The tenant.
In most cases. Our laws are interesting, aren't they?
Right.
It favors the underdog.
It does.
It's always
It
looking
does.
at who's the underdog here.
Yes. It's the same with employer and employee. You take your case to that court as an employer and be careful. The likelihood of losing is always much higher.
It's higher.
than that
Sure.
of winning.
It's
Yes.
higher
But to look on both sides of the coin here,
as a landlord.
exactly. They're going to be up in arms and say, well, it is upon this rent that you pay that I, as an individual, survive. That's going to come up,
Actually,
whether we
true.
like it or not.
It's true.
I can understand about utility bills, whereby KPLC, for example, already has. We're talking about surplus of power for the next 10 or so odd years. So even if you say that people's bills should be taken care of for the next,
Interpretation of news. Carry on.
Yeah.
They have surplus of power for 10 years.
No, that's called interpretation. Carry on.
yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, if you say that and say that they're able to handle this, if you want to break it down even simply and say that they already overcharge on what it is that you receive in the first place, if you're able to give a lower rate on what you're able to pay or even not pay for 3 months, they're not going to take a kick in the pants. They wouldn't.
The bottom line is, I think, even when it comes to all these other bills, it's the government. A government must come in to support some of these measures.
They must.
For instance, landlords, what is it that the government can do so that landlords also don't take a punch?
Yes.
Or take a kick in the face, so to speak?
Or that at least they're met halfway.
Met halfway. So yes, I'm not receiving this income, but also have obligations with the government. What is it that the government can do to reduce those obligations so that I can also survive? If you're talking about Kenya Power, and Jarchit Sei was here the other day, switch off KPLC, her campaign, and she was telling us, how much are you, in your bill, the amount of money that goes to the
How
government?
much are you actually paying the government
The
for your
money
power
that goes
bill?
to the government. Yesterday we saw a reduction of fuel prices. The recommended retail price for petroleum in Nairobi is 92 bob. 47 shillings is going to tax and levies. More than half of what you're paying is basically going to tax.
government.
The government.
But they'll tell you that some of your roads are repaired by the levy. That
See, now we take a break for these things.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we stop everything, and that's what we're saying. In the point that we're talking about now, since they've been paying this money to you for the last, however long, in eternity, in infinity, really, they've been paying all this money to you, so it's been there, overcharged. Whether you want to have the discussion about it now or later really doesn't matter. But we're saying at this point, there should be some reprieve, and there you can see how they would be able to shoulder it. But I'm saying where other individuals are involved, again, in this case, tenants, landlords and landladies, or whatever the case may be, you need to then look on their side as well and say, okay, people shouldn't pay rent, that's fine. But how are you going to cushion these other
Actually,
individuals?
you shouldn't start with they shouldn't pay rent. It's good to have a bill, but in this country, the one thing we have in abundance is associations or groupings.
Yes.
There are associations for landlords, there are associations for tenants, there are associations. These conversations we keep talking about, which are enshrined in our constitution called public participation. Please have this conversation so that there's feedback. If you want to apply some rule against in public transport, have this conversation with the people who control that particular industry. Remember, rentals. These are private individuals. Huh?
That's what I'm saying. These
Yes.
are individuals
So-
who either took a loan, made a personal investment.
Have this conversation
Yeah.
so that you are in tandem with government policy, banks. It then becomes something seamless. There'll be issues, yes, but it is smooth because everyone knows, okay, we're all doing this now towards this, but this is how we'll recover at this time. And you know what? We have people in government who understand how to structure these things very well. Oh, they do. They will tell you this one. The tool we need is A, B, C, D. Now, if those voices of experts and people who actually know what should be done are not being listened to, how on earth do you think you're going to come up with something credible? Because there is need for this intervention, but what form and shape and with what moderation must it be applied?
The Senate committee, I remember, was holding meetings and having sessions with people. I think the interested parties here must have had a conversation.
They did.
Before this bill
They
came
did.
into being, right?
They did. They
now,
did.
so if we say that, for example, we're talking about people, lenders, that's banks and other financial institutions, that you owe money to, go and talk to them. And then we're also saying landlords, go and talk to them. But I'm seeing this is 29(2) of this bill says the Cabinet Secretary responsible for matters relating to housing may, with the approval of Parliament, provide measures to cushion landlords and tenants. Now, you see, everything else is shall. Landlord shall listen to you. Landlord shall have a conversation with you. You shall rework things with your landlord. Shall. But here the Cabinet Secretary may. Says he does not have to. I think we should also be mandating the government to do something to cushion landlords and tenants.
You know, one of the things about implementing such things, and it should be, it will raise dust, it will raise debate. The debates are good. So that people actually tell you where they are hurting, because you have a general rule, but it doesn't apply to everybody.
Yes.
So when that debate takes place, you will then come to a point to realize, okay, this is perhaps what can work or what is acceptable. For instance, I'm going back to the banks again. Huh? If you're talking about, look, the 100 million that Cooperative Bank gave is a large amount. I will not want to say
KCB
that
or cooperative?
Cooperative Bank are the first ones to give 100 million. Okay. KCB put aside 10B
10 billion.
for
Okay,
SMEs.
right,
Yes.
right.
10B. This is a 100 million donation to the Harambee Committee. Now, if you want something that actually brings about lasting change, the question I would ask is, are banks willing to at least forego 50% of their profits? In 2019, our banks recorded a 12.3% over from December 2017, a 12.3% increase. And if you go back, they've just kept increasing the profits that they keep making. I'm saying it is good to make the profits, but if you want to change, are you willing? The other day I also read something quite alarming, that there are some church leaders who are asking for the government to help. Now, I found that a little interesting, don't you think?
I wasn't sure whether that was real, though. I mean,
That's why I said I read. I read it somewhere. And I thought, oh, really?
because of depressed income.
Have we got, yes, but remember, what taxes do the churches actually pay for?
None.
No, they do pay. They do pay. What is considered the core mandate of the church, preaching the gospel, tithes, offerings, those ones you don't pay for. But if you're running a hospital, you'll pay statutory deductions.
For
if
business.
you're running yes, exactly. That's not core mandate. You pay taxes. All right? But then I also thought to myself, it's true. I thought the church was in the business of going beyond these secular issues. Surely divine intervention is what should come in now. Why are you appealing to the government? And you should be helping the government.
It wants money so that it can do evangelization
No.
and reaching out to the people.
No.
Doing
If that
outreach.
report is actually true, it's
17 minutes after 8, this is the situation. It's going to take this conversation shortly. Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja to understand the bill that is proposed. Good morning.
All right, taking a look into Nairobi. Sun's up at 18 degrees today, likely to have showers in the afternoon, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Nyeri at 18 degrees, showers expected later on with highs of 25. In Nakuru at 17 degrees, it's mostly cloudy and we'll have showers in the afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 15. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 16 degrees, showers expected later on with highs of 24 and lows of 13. Kisumu is mostly cloudy at 21 degrees, showers expected there as well with highs of 28 and lows of 20. It's warm in Malindi today at 29 degrees. We'll see highs of 34 and lows of 27 and partly cloudy conditions. Mombasa at 28 degrees is mostly cloudy. Cloudy conditions are going to cover throughout the day. Highs of 31 and lows of 26. Into East Africa and Kampala, where it's cloudy this morning, showers will introduce the afternoon. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam at 25 degrees is mostly cloudy. Showers will be forecasted for the afternoon. Highs of 30 and lows of 24. In Joburg at 12 degrees, it's partly cloudy throughout most of the day with highs of 18 and lows of 8. And wrapping things up in Lagos, it's foggy this morning at 28 degrees. Showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 34 and lows of 27.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is The Situation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and joining us on the line is Super Senator Johnson Sakaja. Good morning, Nairobi Senator Sakaja.
Morning, Eric. How's everyone?
Good morning.
We are very well, thank you.
Mko salama?
Kabisa.
You're keeping safe?
Given the circumstances, doing our best.
Very good.
I hope you guys are salama.
We're also doing the same.
Are.
Oh, excellent. That is good to hear.
Now, Senator, we are seeing reports appearing in the media this morning. The Pandemic Response and Management Bill 2020.
Yes.
That's a proposal of your committee. Tell us about this committee to start with.
Okay. I think as you might be aware, on is it the 1st of April, the Senate is sitting just to address this pandemic. Remember, Parliament had gone on a recess, so we had a special sitting on the 31st of March 2020. And so we resolved to establish an ad hoc committee to look at the COVID-19 situation and just to make sure we oversight actions by national and county governments in addressing the spread and effects. And so there's a whole list of TORs. You realize that many of the issues are cross-cutting, and so it couldn't go ordinarily to any of the departmental committees, say health committee. So on the 1st of April, I think, on the 1st of April, a meeting was held where they elected me chairman, but not as an April Fool's joke. They were serious about it. And Senator Kasanga, and we got to start our work. Given all of this social distancing, etc., we've had to innovate, and we've been holding virtual meetings online. We've done now 14 meetings. Contrary to what your colleagues have been saying, that Parliament to Toroka been working.
Actually, we ourselves have said it very loudly.
For yourselves as well. No, we've been working.
So you've been having meetings, online meetings?
Yeah. We've been having meetings on Zoom. We've been inviting stakeholders. We've been the first thing we did, we clustered the issues to 5 areas. One is the health issues. So that is community health, testing, quarantine, ICU facilities, HR for health, etc. And mental health, importantly. The second area was economic and finance issues. That is the macroeconomic effects of this thing, impact on business, trade facilitation, cushioning borrowers, etc. The third area was social, public order, and human rights. You realize when there's such a thing, many times the first casualty is human rights and the truth. Protecting vulnerable people, women and girls at risk of domestic abuse, learners to continue studies, access to justice, the courts, etc.
Persons with disabilities.
Yeah, persons with disabilities, all these vulnerable people.
Mm.
And then the fourth issue was access to food, water, and basic commodities. So the continuous production and supply of food. You realize, like for instance, now with the lockdown, the supply of food is compromised in urban areas like Nairobi, where we don't farm much.
Yeah.
And you see, when they give a proposal saying you'll only bring food in a truck, they assume that food comes in a big green truck written food. Yet many of the ladies, the women who come to markets, use commuter transport to bring their cabbages and waru. So, that was an entire area. And how do we make sure vulnerable people can access food,
right,
subsidized, etc. Then, of course, support services and cross-cutting issues. So we asked for public submissions. And, I'm really impressed. We got more than 146 submissions from institutions, individuals, organizations, very thorough submissions in all of these 5 thematic areas. The COG, Human Rights Commission, NGOs, the KMPDU, Pharmaceutical Association, everybody, you name it, Chamber of Commerce.
Landlords and tenants?
There's that Landlords and Tenants Association as well. Of course, for many of these as well, we cross-check with the Registrar of Societies to find out if
whether this does exist.
But either way, even an individual has the right to speak to Parliament. And so based on that, we have various interventions, one of which is the bill that you're talking about. That is just one of the interventions.
Okay.
Other interventions are administrative in nature. Others need an omnibus law that touches many different laws that already exist. So Trende Nakazi, we gave our second report yesterday. We've published the bill. And I must say this, Eric, such a situation really shows us, the beauty of the Kenyan people. Kenyans actually care and have ideas, and they came out in numbers. And so I really want to use your platform to just thank everyone who gave a submission. I'll send everyone an email saying thanks and what we've done with the submissions. But really, this is the time to pull together, to show leadership, for Parliament to play its role, and for us to continue with this work.
Good stuff. And very good stuff that you actually were working. You're among the few legislators who should only take a 50% pay cut. You can continue earning the other 50.
I had one saying yesterday he was not elected to go take pay cuts.
Okay.
Really?
Ouch.
Oh my goodness! And this was on public TV. This was on national TV.
That's what I had on TV.
Okay.
Atajua ajui. Now let's come to this bill.
Yes.
Section 29, tenancy agreement, and then also 30, labor relations.
Yeah.
On the tenancy agreement, it says, where a pandemic has affected the financial capacity of a tenant to meet their obligations, 1A, the tenant shall give a notice in writing to the landlord or contracting party that they are unable to meet their obligations because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
B, upon receipt of a notice under paragraph A, the contracting parties shall enter into an agreement on how the tenant shall meet their obligations at the end of the pandemic. And then 2 of that says the Cabinet Secretary in charge of housing will provide measures to cushion landlords and tenants. Let's discuss that first. What exactly are you saying?
Number one, what we're saying is that for the biggest section of our society, the largest expenditure really is rent.
Yep.
And you see, many times we even assume that the people who need to be cushioned are just those maybe in informal settlements in Kibera, in Mathare, and in the slums. Yet we have this huge, I don't know what we call ourselves, because I think I'm maybe one of them, fictitious middle class.
Yes.
Where if we don't get a salary for 2-3 months,
we are done.
We are out. We're done completely.
Yes.
So in the case of a pandemic, and there was a lot of pressure, people saying, let rent be waived. Of course, you can't do that. That will just be populist.
Yep.
But in contracts, many contracts have a force majeure clause.
Yep.
That says when there's something, an act of God or a pandemic or an epidemic, some of those clauses are not applicable, and you can negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're just saying is that we're giving leeway for an agreement between the tenant and the landlord, to say, okay, you may not be able to pay now. How do you restructure this? Are you able to pay? And also in the act, we're talking about for those landlords who have mortgages, the banks also within that period should be able to restructure. And we have different other laws that can support this. So it's really just trying to cushion both sides, not just the tenants, and not saying don't pay. You'll have to pay still, but you have to get into that agreement. Possibly in the regulations under 29.2, that agreement can be deposited with the rent tribunal or something.
Yeah.
And you get into an agreement, because in a pandemic, someone will have to kaza mshipi. So, it'd be unfair on one side, on the other a bit, but it's a pandemic. So you don't just have arbitrary, everyone getting evicted.
True.
As it is, things are tough. So yeah, to some quarters it might sound populist, but I think it's a balance between both sides of it. We've had the president appealing, to landlords, just asking for, please try and relax these things for now. So what we're doing, we're just giving an opportunity for the tenant and the landlord to enter into an agreement.
What do we need a law for this?
The problem sometimes when common sense doesn't prevail in society, then you need a law to make people be good.
Right.
Ideally, you shouldn't need a law. Any reasonable landlord and any reasonable tenant as well. You don't say, it's a pandemic. If you don't have this, people can also take advantage.
True.
So it's really just to bring some order for both parties. And we've given the cabinet secretary for housing, a chance to now to prescribe regulations that can actually protect both landlords and now in further detail to protect landlords and tenants. Yeah.
But now looking at the specific language here, it says that if a tenant is unable, they can write to their landlord.
Yes.
And then the landlord shall enter into an agreement.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you were very deliberate when you use the word shall, because it says this, they're obligated then to have this conversation.
I think they need to be obligated to have the conversation. As it is, there are laws that govern tenancy agreements and contracting between landlords and tenants. It is not just arbitrary, but you can stay in my place without an agreement. And many of these agreements are actually even of a verbal nature in different parts of society.
Yeah.
But this is giving that obligation that you guys must sit and agree. It's a pandemic. The effects on financial capacity of the tenant. The financial capacity of the tenant will also affect the financial capacity of the landlord.
True.
Because some of these landlords, you'll just find it's someone who has 3 rooms in, Kayole or Pipeline. But, they also need those resources. So we're just saying you guys must find a way to agree. And within those regulations, what we are foreseeing is that they should be then able to deposit it, of course, in a strengthened form of the land dispute. I mean the rent dispute tribunal, or whether it's the local OCS or the chief, whatever the case. So just try to govern that relationship a bit more, only during the time of a pandemic.
All right.
And remember, this law we have also prescribed when a pandemic is announced, and when a pandemic the end is also announced
as well.
Declared, because you also don't want someone to say, okay, Sasa, since Corona is like this, we're never paying rent again.
Right.
Because we've seen that happening in some places, as encouraged by politicians.
Of course. Now, the second part of it says that the housing CS may provide measures to cushion landlords. It appears like you're saying the government does not have to do something.
Well, I think on that one, and the good thing, Eric, with what we're doing even with you, is that at this stage, this is the first draft of the bill was hot off the press yesterday.
Yes.
So this is public participation. If we say, look, let us make it a definitive obligation, then we say shall. So I think that really needs to be a direct obligation on the CS.
Senator, as we look forward, and let's say that this is rolling now and it's in practice, do you think there's a structure that is solid enough in place to make sure that you're dealing with any kind of disputes that might come as a result of this? if we're foreseeing that there could be quite a number of people who would come forward and say, look, I'm unable to agree with my landlord, or I'm unable to agree with my tenant, is the structure solid enough in place to take any complaints that would come through?
Not yet, unfortunately. The structure, when you talk about the rent appeals tribunal, right now, they need some more capacity. Because you find, one, the limitation on the amount is low. We need to amend that. Because it talks about 2,500. We need to take it to 150,000 at least, rent, that you're talking about. Number two, you might have a case in Meru, and you're told the chairman of the tribunal, because it's the chairman who listens to these disputes, is in Kakamega. Go to Kakamega. So the first thing we're saying is that let's devolve this tribunal to counties, and then let's also empower advocates in counties to be, arbitrators.
Right.
Use community leaders. You have chiefs in the villages. You have Nyumba Kumi. So let's make it a bit more flexible, so that they have that capacity.
Employ dispute resolution mechanisms.
Exactly. So arbitration and dispute resolution mechanisms need to be employed. So that is a gap that currently exists. But you see, this law, even if you look at how we've called it, the title is the Pandemic Response and Management Bill. We do want to call it a coronavirus bill.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with corona now. Hopefully we'll be done soon. We are praying. But what happens next year or tomorrow
could be something else.
So really we're trying to legislate for posterity. And so even as we do this, then we're alive to the other gaps that may exist within legislation. Yes.
There's this other bit now, the section that talks about labor relations.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
This one, you are saying, 31, where a pandemic adversely affects the ability of an employer to pay salaries or wages. Notwithstanding provisions of the Employment Act, an employer shall not terminate a contract of service or dismiss an employee.
Yes.
And B, an employer shall not coerce an employee to take a salary cut.
Yes.
And number two, you're saying, despite what you've just described above, an employer is unable, where an employer is unable to meet his obligation to pay salaries or wages, the employer shall permit an employee to take leave of absence without pay for the duration of the pandemic.
You see, I also know how this one sounds, and I know why you went to 29:30. During a pandemic, of course, the different vagaries of the economy. Even before a pandemic, we saw KQ sending people on unpaid leave.
Yes.
But they didn't terminate their employment. And so we're saying, if it's because of a pandemic that you're not able to sustain this staff that you have, one, don't force them to take a cut. Don't terminate it, but you can send them on unpaid leave, and such that when you improve, and we hope now you'll be able to bounce back, then you bring them back. And that's what we're saying. We need measures. If you look at 3, the CS Labour and Parliament can develop measures to cushion employees and employers, especially employers.
Yeah.
We can have government-backed credit guarantees. That now the employer says, because of this pandemic, I need to access certain support for my business. And so you have a government-backed security. You go and you get some assistance, and those are the other laws that we want to amend. But the issue of mass job losses, and then when you bounce back, then you look for other people, actually goes against the Labor Relations Act as it stands today.
Yeah, it's a dicey one. This one.
It's dicey, but I think.
Are you saying that the Labor Relations Act considers in detail the outcomes of a pandemic and perhaps what needs to be considered?
No. The Labor Relations Act doesn't talk about pandemics, but it says what needs to be considered when it comes to relieving someone of their work. So you just can't
terminate somebody.
Just terminate somebody just like that, or force somebody to take a pay cut. Even the Constitution itself says that, and this is especially for public officers, that you cannot review downwards the remuneration of a public officer. So the same should be there in the private sector.
But is it in the case of a pandemic, or is it just when things are normal? Yes.
This is force majeure.
So Labor Relations Act says when things are normal, you don't just fire someone. So what we're saying here, even in the situation of a pandemic, don't just fire someone. try and send them on unpaid leave. But, you know, within the regulations I will provide for, how do you look for some, business relief, for instance, you know, from government? If you look at legislation, in fact, what we've been able to do before we came up with this, we've analyzed what 20 other jurisdictions have done across the world. 20 other countries, what their parliaments have done. If you look, for instance, at what they call the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act in the States, it is extremely thorough in the manner of business support that can be given. Now, of course, we have not reached their level.
So it's prescriptive.
It's very prescriptive.
The act says what the government shall do.
Oh, it talks about entrepreneurial development.
Right.
It talks about what the government shall do. How can you apply for that kind of business relief? Where do you access it from? Grant determination, how it is done. You know, they have a style of legislation that is extremely. It's not like our Westminster style. Theirs is extremely detailed there. But for us, we leave more to regulations.
But Senator, is it really the legislation, or is it the willingness of the citizenry to actually abide by the legislation?
Well, you see, for us, what we do is to legislate first. And then we must encourage the citizens.
Then goodwill comes in second.
You know, we can't say, since people are unwilling, let me as a legislator stop legislating. I still have to legislate. I have to provide, because, you know, even with Corona CT, as Senator of Nairobi, I'm not a doctor. I can't go to hospital. All I can do is oversight, represent, and legislate, and make sure that I've done my part. Now, to enforce the law, the executive needs to do their part in making sure laws are implemented. And society, people like you guys who educate Kenyans, need to encourage them to follow the law. So let's all do our part.
So let's come back into this particular one. So first of all, the proposal here is that an employer should not coerce or give anybody a pay cut.
Because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Or even terminate services because of a pandemic.
Yes.
And also it says it's easier for you to send somebody on unpaid leave.
Yeah, leave of absence without pay for that duration.
For that duration.
But because as you said, this is almost even a force majeure element of that contract.
Yeah.
But that person's right to employment is still guaranteed. I mean, when you close down a hotel and there are no customers coming in, there's no cash flow.
There's no income.
It's hard for you to pay them, of course.
There's no income. It's impossible for the employer to pay them.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that then you render the person jobless. And so within those regulations, and I think within this time, because we have a 6-month mandate as this committee, we'll also go down into the details of now how do we access. Imagine, we have said we have a 20 billion fund, which might even go up, that we're proposing to be set up. And it is accessible to banks, and it's it's government backed. Such that different institutions, and banks have a way of saying, okay, this is what your cash flows have been. Yes, we can see that it has gone down because of this pandemic. Yes, we will advance you this amount of money for you to be able to sustain your workforce and your business. That is how we cushion businesses and how we cushion employers and employees.
But so the other part of this particular clause talks about the government now coming up with measures that will cushion employers and employees. It does not become prescriptive.
Again, they will say shall.
Oh, that's shall. Yes.
Yeah, and you see, when he says with the approval of Parliament, normally we talk about subsidiary legislation. That is then regulations, because our how do I call it, Commonwealth? Westminster sounds very Borisish. Our Commonwealth style is not letting acts of Parliament or statutes be too prescriptive, but the details come in regulations.
But doesn't that just open it up to all manner of interpretations?
No. Now, when you have the regulations
now become prescriptive.
They're very prescriptive, and they must come to Parliament.
Okay.
To the delegated legislation committee.
So this all happens, and this is put into enforcement, Senator, and then you have people who may have already lost their jobs, for example, before this bill comes into play, and then it does. What happens to them?
And that's why we're talking about safety schemes, social safety schemes in Section 31. to support vulnerable people, informal sector workers, vulnerable households, anyone who's been disrupted by the pandemic. We're talking about cash transfers. Incidentally, and many people I don't know if I should be saying this on radio. Government has a lot of information, based on all these things we've been doing, Udumba, census, whatnot.
Census.
That if decide, if the executive decides to actually, send 5Gs to every vulnerable household, they can do it at the touch of a button.
That's true.
And so it is up to us now as your representatives, because I think that's the reason you voted for me. I'm sure you did. To now push the government to actually help these vulnerable people. I can tell you in Nairobi, so many people cannot access food. The kind of messages we're getting.
Yeah.
And there's the assumption that, maybe when there's a lockdown, let's do it. Already it is dire in many parts of the city. We have an entire night economy, Eric. We know many musicians or our friends, DJs, bouncers, waiters, Uber drivers, who cannot sustain themselves as we speak today.
Yeah, because they have basically lost their jobs. They have no income.
Of course, they've lost it. There's no bouncer bouncing now during the day or at night. No, there's no DJ. They're doing live shows for free on Instagram.
Waiters and waitresses are not working.
Waiters, waitresses, because everywhere is just now takeaway.
True.
Take out, So there is actually need for social safety nets for these people. And we need to realize that the vulnerable are no longer geographically compact. They're not just in Kibera. They're in Kileleshwa.
Yeah.
They're in Eldoret.
Yep.
They're in Kilimani. They're in South Sea. They're not just in Mukuru. A huge percentage of your listeners right now, Eric,
are in distress.
They're in distress. They don't know what to do. They don't know where they'll feed their families next week. Schools are asking for school fees. Some of the schools.
Yes.
And I've seen in many groups, even some groups I'm on, I won't say the school. Parents are saying, for what?
Absolutely.
True.
Parents are asking what's going to happen to what they paid last month that was not utilized.
Exactly. But also remember, the teachers still need salaries. So there's a balance. And that's why we need to look, and that's what we are proposing. And I've spoken to colleagues in the National Assembly. We need to realign our budgets. We are extremely exposed as a country. The macroeconomic effects of this, if you look at the World Bank report, are going to be tough.
Yes.
It's going to be tough times. So some of these big projects, unfortunately, we might have to put on hold.
True.
Put a lot more on just cushioning, on safety nets. I'm glad after fuel has gone down.
Has it?
And I
thought it was announced that it has gone down. Has it actually gone down?
It does go. It goes down immediately at midnight. 18 bob cheaper.
Normally they say the stock, but I think some stations have reflected it.
Yep.
Yeah, I've not had a chance to see it. But
this one is usually not in negotiation of your stock finishes.
Yeah.
At midnight it changes.
Actually, ERC implement. You're right. Actually,
yep.
ERC normally they implement that immediately, and that is good because the cost of fuel affects food and inflation and everything.
Yes.
So I think the stance we must all take as a country at this point is and yesterday in my submission in the Senate, because I was telling the executive that they shouldn't play cat and mouse hiding from oversight. We are not antagonistic as Parliament. We are trying to support what the executive is doing.
In fact, you're too supportive from where some of us sit.
We need to be, but of course, with keen eyes.
Yeah.
Just to make sure this is a time a country comes together. This is a time we say, okay, yes, I was earning an extra maybe 2 million out of my rental. Relaxing it to an M is not too bad.
True.
If I'm a landlord, for instance,
True. Yep.
I might have to fight these guys, but if I agree with them, something, it just calls for humanity. This is a time for humanity. And so this law and the other interventions I'm bringing another report next Tuesday. Really will need a lot of goodwill from the people, a lot of goodwill from, in fact, even from the National Assembly, because this is initially a Senate initiative. We had asked them to also set up another committee, which I'm sure they will do. That's what we can work together. So for now, let's forget those fights of upper house, lower house. Let's forget which party you're in. Let's forget what question we asked you last time when you came to Bunge. For now, let's be pragmatic and see what is best for the people of Kenya.
Right. I know that we're currently talking about the bill and we're looking at stimulus and, trying to cushion because of what's happening here. I have to ask, though, doesn't this also present an opportunity to look into the future about work that actually should be done, Senator, about what needs to be put in place? Because look at other countries, and the truth is that they didn't struggle when it came to making sure that their people were cushioned. It was a let's go, let's do it, let's get it done now. It can be done because it was number one, already considered. Number two, it was already enshrined in law. Isn't it time to look at then what needs to be done in terms of buckling down and get some things done for the future, regardless of what that would be?
I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, this is not a time for me to point fingers, but last year, early 2019, Senator Mutula Kilonzo and I co-sponsored a bill on national disaster management and how it cascades to the counties and preparedness. And it's been stuck in the National Assembly since, If this was done, there would probably be no need even for this intervention at this point. Number two, some of the representations we've received from governors, for instance, we've been given, last year we gave 316 billion to governors. In Nairobi, I made sure Nairobi has around 16 billion. And other counties got amounts based on all those factors. When a governor is saying they need money to buy chemicals to fumigate, when a governor says they don't know the cost of an ICU bed, it shows that there's been something fundamentally wrong on this devolved function called health.
Or something fundamentally wrong with that individual.
Especially.
Yes.
Especially with that individual. And so our underbelly is clearly soft. And we just thank God that so far these cases have not escalated. At least in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's been some good response by government, by national government. You can see, they've gotten, PPEs now coming in. You can see we're upgrading a lot of hospitals. But we were caught, I must say we were caught flat-footed as a country. We need to be better prepared. In fact, as Senate, we are considering, since we're doing the Division of Revenue bill, a conditional grant to make sure every county gets 10 extra ICU beds direct. We're not giving them the money to go buy them. It's going to be a direct. That money can only be used for ICU facilities, such that in the next 3 or 4 months, we have another 470 ICU beds across our county. And so it's a bad opportunity, but it's an opportunity for us to right those wrongs, but also for the electorate to remember what their leaders have been doing in the different spheres. So it's exposed us a bit. It's exposed.
Not a bit. It has exposed us heavily.
The phrase he's using is correct. Where in the English language you say a bit, it means it's a lot.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Yes, the senator is right. It's exposed us a bit. Carry on, please.
It's really exposed us. But I'm saying a bit because I thank God. If we had 1,000 cases today, we'd be in trouble. Or maybe last week. Maybe today we can handle a bit more. But if we did that in the last 2 weeks, if we got just a huge surge of these cases, we'd be in trouble. Remember, the ICU beds are not waiting for corona patients. The other patients with also other
issues. Did it a while ago.
That have been there. And so in as much as, by the way, we've made some good strides in other aspects. If you look at kidney issues of dialysis, we've actually made a lot of progress since the medical equipment service scheme started. I was guest of honor at the World Kidney Day, and the doctors were saying, we rarely congratulate government, but we'd have lost by now another 4,000 people.
Wow! That
are not able to get this service. So yes, we must say yes, some good has been done, but I think we can do better as a people. The Kenyan people normally perform better than the leaders. I don't know why, and then you keep choosing us. But as a people,
we deserve better.
But Senator, I would look at this situation we're in as yet another opportunity for anything that may have gone wrong. This is a period of redemption. Things can be righted, wrongs can be put right, and many things that we had previously not done could get done.
That is true.
And even the terrible image and the loss of confidence that we say the citizenry have on our leadership, that also can be remedied. But it must be taken seriously because floods are with us, locusts are with us, even at the same time as the coronavirus is with us.
I think number one, the image and the disaffection. There's a public disaffection towards the elected leaders. That is natural. I don't think that changes. And I'll give you an example. Your sister newspaper did a story calling us traitors on Monday.
Yes.
Yet some of the guys who did that story have been attending my committee and they're private to what we've been doing, saying we've done nothing. So there's also a level of dishonesty sometimes that shows that it actually sells and it's fashionable to bash leadership. Yes, we have failed in many respects, but also
Senator, when you highlight an issue, do you highlight the exceptions or do you highlight the rule?
Normally we highlight the rule, but the exceptions are what are newsworthy.
They're worth a mention somewhere. You've got like a footnote.
Something.
But this is why we're talking to you, because we want the exceptions to actually tell us what is also happening. Yeah. The others are also given a chance, and sometimes they do not respond.
No. And I'm really grateful, and I agree. And let it be not lost to us. Yeah, let it not get lost. That yes, this is an opportunity to remedy a lot of the issues that have not been going right. And I pledge to the people of Nairobi who are listening that I will continue to do my part as your senator, and I pledge that the Senate, because for now I'm leading the initiative in the Senate, we will do our part. So please don't lose faith in us completely. Just pull out the weeds of skepticism. Believe in us a little.
We need to whip you a bit. That's what we ought to do.
You ought to be vigilant, but not dismissive.
All right. So let's end on this conversation on this one point.
Yeah.
The issue of pay cuts. Yes. So everybody else, as you know, everybody else is taking some reduced income.
Yeah.
Your leadership in the Senate and the National Assembly have also taken some voluntary pay cuts.
The speakers.
The speakers, right?
Yeah.
Not the leaders yet. So, do you think it's about time that all other members of Parliament take a pay cut, and actually not just members of Parliament, and across other cadres of government as well?
No. Let me answer it this way. There's the popular answer, the populist one, to say yes, take everything. And people will clap. The first question we must ask, we are talking about a certain amount of money that is required. Yeah?
Yes.
What is the impact of individuals who also within their incomes, have commitments? I know many members, and honestly, when Senator Mukomen said it yesterday, it's not a lie. I know many members whose pay slips may be reading 10,000-20,000 shillings. They have committed a lot of their resources. The impact of that in compared to the real needs that we have. Number two, it is true that the burden of the wage bill is extremely high. If you look at how many Kenyans work for the public service, less than 1 million. Actually, possibly less than 600,000. Yet, more than 40% or 50% of our revenue
goes to paying salaries.
Overhead.
So what we need is not just a political knee-jerk reaction of even me have dedicated my entire salary. Because in essence, without announcing it, if you look at for instance, for my case, if you look at the instance of the causes I support, the people I'm supporting, it's really as if I've taken the cut. But instead of looking at it in terms of populist individual moves, how do we reconfigure that wage discussion to make sure that we're not burdening you, Latif, and CT and Do, that for every soda you're buying, out of that VAT, half of it is going to pay me. I think that's the more sustainable discussion we need to have. It is true we need to look at the issue of public wage remuneration as a whole.
Yes.
But let us not fall into the trap of just trying to be populist, to look good, say that, I have given away my entire salary, And in essence, you have not. Many of the people who are announcing that, and I will not name names, they just say it, but they're not treated.
It's just for what? And that's why I'm saying this should not be a voluntary thing. The same thing that we're talking
It should
about.
not.
The employers are sending letters to their employees, telling their employees,
Yeah.
due to these harsh times, this is what we are doing.
And it's not a discussion.
It's not a discussion. The same
Yeah.
thing should not be that you, Senator Sakaja, because you're feeling sufficiently philanthropic, you therefore say that I'm going to take a 20% or 80% or 40% pay cut. It should come. This is an opportunity, just like you said earlier. This is an opportunity for us to right very many wrongs.
I
Is
agree.
it also not an opportunity for us to review as well and say, okay, so how much are we paying people? What is it that we can do? And start, because you're asking whether it would have an impact. I believe it would have a huge impact. Whatever amount of money that we can salvage now could have an impact.
I agree in terms of when you look at fiscal consolidation in its entirety, we need to review our recurrent and our development. We need to review all that. We need to review how much we pay everybody in public service. That one I agree. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But I will not go and tell a member, now you have to cut your salary by this percentage. One, even if I want to, Eric, I don't pay myself. There's an institution that has that role.
Yes.
So it is SRC. This discussion should not be on voluntary basis, that some MPs are taking pay cuts, others are not taking pay cuts.
It shouldn't be.
Speaker they decide and say,
It should be an SRC conversation.
35. It needs to be a conversation, of course, based on a constitution that will take effect with the new, either the new dispensation, or we can choose to even forget that provision of the law and say, okay, from now on, let's tujipange with
Yes.
because it's tough times. Let's pull up our socks. And I am ready personally to do it, but I'm saying that is not the answer. The answer is to review the entire public sector wage burden on the public, and not just that. To also review why do we have to have a budget of 3 trillion? I keep asking. We don't need a 3 trillion budget in this country. We're trying to do everything at the same time. It doesn't work because what it does, it puts so much pressure on government because of the deficit to then go to the domestic market to borrow. And so, Eric, on your side hustle or my biashara or anybody's biashara, you cannot get money from the private sector. And so the economy is not growing. President Mwai Kibaki is loaded with running a brilliant economy and doing a lot of things. His budget never hit 1.5 trillion,
Yep.
So instead of doing 1,000 big projects, just do a few meaningful ones, but make sure the common person has money in their pocket, and that is by ensuring there's cash flow, there are no pending bills, you're paying people, and your budget is well balanced. So I look at the real, most sustainable answers, not just that which might be popular, and my listeners say, hey, Super Senator has taken a pay cut. No. That is not the answer to that is not the real solution.
But for now,
in my humble opinion, and I could be wrong.
That would not be the long-term answer, but now when
now
it's at
we'd
crunch
appreciate
time,
as
something
well.
needs to be done.
Actually, we applaud the Senate
Yeah.
for the 200 million that they removed from one of their budgets. That is a structural solution, and it's a good one. But you see, we haven't heard Parliament coming up with any such suggestion, or maybe they've come up
National
with
Assembly.
it. National Assembly, and maybe I haven't read it, but have they really?
They haven't yet. I had a suggestion of, I think, trying to come up with $1 billion from part of this budget. And let me give you an example. This 200 million was possibly not even essential,
Yeah.
It was probably in a budget line that was not a must. I've always said, guys, you don't have to, you saw some MCs going to see where Jesus was born in his time. or people were saying, we're going to see how Facebook works. But you see, that 200 million is a significant amount. That's what I'm saying. If you tell every member, for instance, if you tell me to cut $500,000, and we're 67 of us, if we all take a cut of $500,000 in the Senate, that is 33 million, 33.5.
Yes.
Without going to a pay cut, 200 million has been found.
Yeah. Just like that.
That was not essential.
Senator, if the discussion is as you're presenting it, no one will even talk about the pay cut. It's the response we've had from leaders of your ilk regarding this pay cut. It's the way they've responded and the disdain with which they've responded that has actually elicited the debate that we're having. How dare you talk about responsibility as though they're the only people in this country who have responsibility?
It's about being completely tone deaf. Everybody, just like you can pass on the message to Senator Murkomen. Everybody who has a salary has some commitment.
Everyone who doesn't have a salary has commitments.
Everybody
as
who
well.
does not have a salary has some commitment. People have loans, all right? The same way we are being urged to go and have conversations with the banks.
Yeah.
It's the same way we'd urge our leaders to go and have conversations with their banks or whoever they owe money to.
And you know what? Maybe you guys, because your show runs from, is it 7 to 10?
6.
6.
6.
6 to 10.
Yes.
So from 10 kwenda mbele, you guys should have a side hustle to come do PR and media management to Wabunge.
I think it might be necessary because you know what? Just like you said now, you talked about 200 million shillings having been found without a pay cut even being mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So that means that there are other avenues to
Some
get
thought
this.
process went into
Some
it.
thought process went into
Not
it. Somebody
mouth
said,
process.
"Oh, listen, folks, there's some money here that if we really looked at it, it was not necessary for us to have this particular project in place, right?
We can still operate without
And we
it.
can operate without it." But like CT said, Senator, it is clear that the attitude that comes from it is like, even if I were to get a pay cut, how far is it really going to go? Without taking into consideration that there's somebody who relies on a very little bit to get through the day. And so it makes a huge difference to them.
I completely agree with you. And I really feel that what we need to be doing right now, and I had that discussion even last evening with the chairman of the budget committee, let us reopen the financial year's budget and remove everything that is not essential. And you will make much more meaningful savings than arbitrary pay cuts. Let SRC also review and say this public wage burden cannot be at the percentage it is.
Yes.
So to have a review, you see the last time the problem of what they did, the review was not based on anything empirical, it was not a study. They just said, we want to save X amount, divided by every member.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything. In fact, even at that point, it looked like...
And what was the response of our elected leaders? Get rid of the head of this particular agency.
Serema and China.
So now, and you see now what's going on in China. But you see, maybe because you went with a bad news. But the point is, it looked like one arm of government was just being targeted because it's always a soft, it's an easy target. Yet wages in the other arms were going up. So what I'm saying, we need to have an objective discussion on the entire budget and say, look, the public wage bill is this amount. This is where ideally it should be based on best practice. Number two, you're spending, maybe even you'll find billions, tens of billions on things that are not essential.
Yeah.
Cut that out. This is the time to do it. There's no other time that we can do it.
We will never get this
discussion must keep pushing. Yeah.
And also, but Senator, there's something that I believe your fellow senators and members of parliament need to understand. They are not our lords and saviors, they are servants. And they should stop talking to us from this lofty perspective and view that we are people who should be talked down to. They must understand what their mandate is. And so long as there's this disconnect, they will have serious problems.
No, for me, I completely agree with that. And I don't know what happens sometimes when these positions, maybe, I don't know, go to your head. Leadership is a privilege, number one. And it's service. It's so that now you elect me as your senator, and now I'm suddenly the biggest honcho. I have a motorcade with an ambulance.
Right.
I have, and there are no ambulances. If you look at some of the motorcades some leaders have, including many governors, you wonder if the guy is actually fit to be in office. The guy should be in hospital. If you're moving around with an ambulance. And it is this king mentality that has been created that when in Mkubwa, you need 3 drivers, you need someone to open your door, and the day you choose to drive, it is a story. You have to put it online.
It's a story.
Calm down. I tell people to calm down.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. These things come and go. Power is transient.
Kabisa. Senator Johnson Sakaja, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thanks so much for your time, guys.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you very much,
appreciated.
Senator.
Yeah, and stay safe.
You too,
Social
please.
distance. What you have.
You too, and tell your colleagues not to host parties.
Don't get out.
Yeah. Asante sana.
8 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll now open up the phone lines for you to join in the conversation. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. City Muga. Today's proverb.
Usitukane mkunga na uzazi ungalipo.
Usitukane mkunga na uzazi bado
Ungalipo.
ungalipo. Hey, tell that to MPs. Good morning.
On Mombasa Road, traffic inbound for some reason. Everybody seems to be on the road now trying to get into the CBD. Maybe something is happening and we do not know, but we'll have a look at that in a bit. Around the Shell stations on Enterprise Road, there seems to be some traffic. There's a hold-up. Lorries and trucks and all sorts of other vehicles. Something is happening there. All right. Taking a look further afield, Mombasa Road a little bit inbound, but that is okay. Not so bad. It'll open up in just a bit. The transportation of goods is something that we're seeing more and more and more of. That could be an explanation. The southern and eastern bypasses, we have no problems there. It's quite open and not giving anybody any kind of a headache right now. Okay, it all looks pretty good except for what we've highlighted just now. If anything, let us know. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Traffic looks good otherwise.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Lattis, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist.
We've heard from the senator what the bill is basically proposing. Some of the measures that have been, proposed there, talking about asking employers not to enforce pay cuts, asking landlords to listen to their tenants. And then, tough times, yes. Tough measures, yes. Practicality, not sure.
In terms of actually how it's going to happen, I have my doubter's hat on already. We heard him say that in terms of the infrastructure that is needed to carry out some of these things, should it roll out? Unfortunately, it's not in place. I know
of a landlord who reduced his rent immediately after this thing came into force, even in January.
Mm-hmm.
And has reduced it even further, his rent even further. And when I asked him, he told me, you have to be realistic. Either have people leaving your house in the dead of night and not paying you, or ask them what is reasonable and let them pay you. So at least it's occupied and you're getting money. As opposed to them leaving and you have no money and you have empty space, and yet you still need money to maintain the place.
Even if it's half the amount, for sure, that to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, he put it well. He said, when someone is living in the house is being looked after.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no one living in it, the house decays. So there are people who've done it. This conversation that revolves around mistrust is something that we have reared in our midst. And now it's actually it's rearing its ugly head and it's coming to bite us yet again. Because who in this country does not know what COVID-19 is doing? It's the conversation that has taken center stage in every aspect of our lives.
This does not even require government intervention.
No.
Although government intervention is important because landlords also have obligations and the government needs to come in and cushion. Right? So conversation should happen. Yes, you as my tenant, let's discuss. What can you do? I'm going to give you a discount of X amount of money, or we can say, pay me what you can afford now, then we shall look at how you shall meet up with the arrears later. That conversation should be happening. But at the same time, the conversation with the government should also be happening in terms of, all right, so what are your obligations? What do you need? What kind of support do you need as a landlord? What kind of support do you need as a tenant?
These are unknown waters that Kenya as a government would essentially be treading here, because they've never been in a situation whereby you would need to get feedback from the people. not that you always need to, but that actually having that practice whereby people are telling you this is what we need, this is how we see things run, and then you would actually take that and do something with it, and that complaint would actually translate into some kind of action, and you could see some kind of development thereafter. It's rare. It's not something that's done regularly. So you're getting into a place where it's unknown. You don't know, you've never done it before, and then now being asked to do it, to hear from the people that this thing that you're doing is actually not working, and here as an association, of which there are many, this is our suggestion of what we think you should do, so that you can then help us, as opposed to us helping or buffering you. It's never been. It's uncharted. It's uncharted. It's unknown.
But Eric is right. If the public do what they can do and go to the government and say, this is what we want you now to do. We've done our bit. And the truth is, they are doing their bit. You only need to consider something as simple as the production of face masks. Kenya doesn't need to import. If you look carefully, we don't need to import gloves either. If you look carefully, a lot of the things that we do on a daily basis, we have never actually needed to import. It's just a carelessness of these leaders. They've never allowed our private sector to mushroom and bloom and flourish as best as it can because of lack of support. One, with, say, something as simple as cost of energy. Simple. If that issue of cost of energy had been managed and was reasonable, we would be very competitive as a country. This production would be extremely competitive.
But I think it also comes down to what Sakaja has just told us. Look, you're going into a 3 trillion shilling budget.
For what?
Right? Trying to do everything at the same time. And that's why you require so much money. You're trying to tax every little bit. More than half of what we pay in electricity as well is taxes and levies. Now, if you just reduce that...
Most of what we pay for everything, really...
Everything is just tax and levy.
First of all, how much do we collect every year? Is it 1.5 billion? A trillion?
Trillion.
Yes. Budget with 1.5 trillion, for heaven's sake.
And we can work with that.
Yes.
Are you saying we can't really manage ourselves?
Of course we can. We would happily say, these projects are good for us. But when the former... what was it called? The Auditor General tells you that we lose up to 1 trillion. Then you wonder.
So we didn't need it in the first place.
So wait. So you are telling us you are taxing us so that we can raise this money so that somebody can steal it.
It get lost to corruption, graft here, mismanagement, misallocation. So in the first place, you seem to have gotten by for that 1 year, right? You got by. Most of the things that you wanted to do were more or less done. You paid salaries, overheads were met, etc., etc.
Yep.
So basically what you're saying is that you're factoring in corruption and graft and theft when you're doing this budget. Because if you want to look at it holistically, if you've seen that the trend has been that 1 trillion shillings of this money has gone missing, then you don't need it in the next year.
You don't need it.
You don't need it. You really don't.
So you don't need it. Many of these capital projects that you speak of, you don't need to build them every year. You budget once, it's done, finished.
Move.
Do something else.
You don't even need to do like 25 projects at the same time.
No, you don't.
Just decide,
no, you
right.
don't.
So
No, you don't.
If you look at what we've done in the energy sector since the Kibaki years, 2003, right? So first of all, breaking down that energy sector and saying this, you shall focus on production, you shall focus on transmission, you shall focus on last mile, dealing with the customers.
Precisely.
That has worked so well. It has increased our energy mix. It has increased our production capacity.
Yes.
Now we have our production capacity for energy. Good.
We even have surplus. Think. Remember when we talk about having resources that we don't utilize? What do we do with this surplus? It's a surplus. A surplus, if you're looking at the basic laws of supply and demand in economics, should actually have brought the what? The cost down. Because there's more supply than there's demand, isn't it? It
goes higher and higher,
yes,
if anything.
This twist of new economic understanding, where do we get it from?
It would be very interesting to see if in the next 2 to 3 weeks, in the next 21 days or however, because we've seen the prices of fuel actually come down, it would be very interesting to see if electricity bills also would come down.
This polite talk of we should see it.
I'm saying it would be very interesting to see if
it's going to be minimal. Because even the element, the amount of money that we pay because of fuel, the fuel adjustment is still small, right? Everything else is still high. So fuel adjustment part of your electricity bill is what? Is it 1.56% or something like that? So reduce that. You'll just reduce a small amount.
Ask yourself the question, Eric. These diesel power generating plants, given that we have other alternative sources of power, why not just decommission them? Then you'll find there was a contractual obligation.
There was, and there needed to be. And I'm always in support of that. There needed to be. You cannot come and put up a 2 trillion shilling project where your only customer is one, and you don't guarantee that they're going to give you business.
Eric,
if you do that, then
if
allow
that was
me to come and invest, and then I can also sell.
If that was the only perspective, I would agree with you completely. But unfortunately, it isn't. Because we have other contractual obligations that we've had that unfortunately, the person who gets the short end of the stick is always the citizenry. I mean, you know how much power we needed over what period of time. You factored in the cost and you worked it out. The people who do these things. So how can it be that even when we've been paying after all this time, when was it to come to an end? And surely, is there not a clause? Should there not have been a clause that takes care of an eventuality such as the one where we are now producing? Because we had started developing other sources of
I
power.
think that's where we operate from.
Yes.
We operate from the minimums.
Yes.
We operate from the minimum. The amount of power that you shall at the very least produce.
This is what
and
we should
feed
produce.
into the grid.
I personally...
And
This is
without
how much.
factoring in that there will be a time where a surplus would be realized, and then what is then done with that?
No.
Provision for such was never made.
we were developing other sources of power at the same time. It's not as though we got stuck there. That's why we have this surplus. So surely you had to have envisioned a time when
there
these
would be.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So
Yeah.
even when contracting, it would have been with that in mind that at such a point is where it would be. Ours doesn't come to an end.
Unfortunately.
It's 20 minutes after 9. Let's take a look at the weather.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi this morning. Well, the sun is peeking out on some parts in the eastern part of the city. However, we're going to see some showers later on with highs of 25 and lows of 16. In Nyeri at 18 degrees, it's mostly cloudy. Showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 25. Nakuru at 17 degrees is going to be mostly cloudy for parts of the morning, but then open up into an afternoon of showers, highs of 26. Eldoret at 16 degrees is mostly cloudy. There will be showers in the afternoon with highs of 24. Looking then into Kisumu at 21 degrees. It's mostly cloudy this morning. Showers expected in the afternoon as well with highs of 28. Malindi at 29 degrees is partly cloudy. Warm afternoon there, highs of 34 and lows of 27. Mombasa is mostly cloudy at 28 degrees. A cloudy evening, highs of 31 and lows of 26. Kampala is cloudy this morning at 21 degrees. Showers expected in the afternoon, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam at 25 degrees is mostly cloudy. Showers in the afternoon with highs of 30 and lows of 24. In Johannesburg at 12 degrees, it's mostly cloudy today. Highs of 18 and lows of 8. Cool evening. And finally in Lagos, it's a foggy morning still. Highs of 34 with rain expected in the afternoon and lows of 27.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 23 minutes after 9.
Mornings done right.
So I've seen a message. Somebody saying, I need to get out of this bed or I'm going to be late for the couch. Another one. This is the first time in my life that I see a month that has no weekend. Every day is every day. It's just same. Every day is every day. We're now joined on the line by Dr. Mercy Korir, guest host for this season. Good morning, Dr. Ari.
Good morning. Good morning, Eric, CT, Ndu.
Good morning,
Good
Dr.
morning to
Ari.
you.
That is a very good quote. Every day is every day.
Every day is just every day.
Yeah.
You don't even know. You don't even remember.
You can actually forget which day of the week it is.
Which day did we last speak? It was that day.
It was that day. But I realize this is a privilege of few because for a good number of other people, life is either going on as it was or it has become much more difficult.
Indeed.
So only a few of us can afford to work from home or cut down on what we are doing. So it's actually, I've just come to realize it's a privilege of very few of us.
True. That's right. That's very true. That's very true. Dr. Ari, there's a story that you were doing the other day. Was it yesterday?
Yesterday. It was in the papers yesterday.
Right. On the kind of back and forth, the push and pulls within government for control of COVID-19 funds.
Okay. Well, from what I have seen, or from the few of my associates that I'm talking with, there is a lot left to be desired from how everything is happening. I think we have gone back to who we are as, let me say we, because some of the leaders we put there, or some people who are in leadership positions there, because ultimately we voted someone in who put them there, or we voted them in directly. So there's been a lot. Things could have happened faster, but I find that people are not using the channels that would move things a little bit faster. People still want to, go to the old ways of doing things, not realizing that we are in a pandemic, in an emergency, where, for example, even 2 weeks since the CS told us that they will have supplied 10,000 personal protective equipment by week 1, and by the end of this week they would have done some 200,000 more, it is still not happening because we are stuck in doing things our old way. So one could be that genuinely we are stuck in doing things the old way, or two, there are certain interests that are now aligning themselves, or that have seen that there is something here for them to benefit.
So people basically just putting in some stumbling blocks on the way. Because is it really possible that by the time the CS was announcing that we are going to be able to provide X number of PPEs within a certain time, it must have come from the industry itself? People saying, this is my capacity, I can produce 300 a day, I can produce 5,000 a day or 2,000 a day. So if they'd already been given the go-ahead to do it, why would they be able not to meet that capacity?
Okay, so there's two sets of personal protective equipment here. There is a shipment that was coming in. It has been coming in for the longest time. Then there was a plane that had gone to China to get some medical supplies, some 18 tons of it. PPEs were supposed to be part of that consignment. And then now there is the locally manufactured, which we saw yesterday, the Ministry of Health plus some of the officials from the unions and association go to EPZ to see and test and assess if they are of good quality. So there are all those streams. So when we were talking about the PPEs to be distributed, we were talking about the ones that were supposed to come into the country.
I see.
Because I remember in my last interview with Kenya's WHO representative here, which was about 3 weeks back, he told me that there was a shipment that was coming in. But there's been no evidence that there is that shipment that has come in yet. The 18 ton of cargo that came in, we are yet to establish what it really had. If it were PPE, we would expect that, the healthcare workers would have gotten this PPE, and then there would not be all this noise that we are hearing. So there are certain very gray areas that have me worried. I would want to believe that people are not putting in stumbling blocks or having their interests out first before that of Kenyans.
I
So
hear you,
I prefer to give them the
Dr.
benefit
I
of
hear you
doubt.
saying that the possibility of corruption having found her way into this yet again is the situation. Is that what you're saying?
I'm giving people the benefit of doubt that they would have.
You're being kind.
That there's an emergency, that they would do the right thing.
They do the right thing. Maybe it's the other thing also, just falling into our way of doing things, promising things and not having clear timelines, because this also happens. We talk about this is going to happen in 6 weeks' time, in 6 months' time, knowing full well you don't even know whether you can get this thing done in 3 weeks' time or 6 weeks' time.
Which is a problem in itself. Take, for example, something like testing, where the turnaround time in the lab itself is, let's say, 4 to 6 hours. But the results take anything from 24 to 48 hours.
48 hours.
Why would that happen?
The result is being processed and being keyed in and being linked to a Huduma number.
I don't know what happened. So there are lots of inefficiencies that really should not be happening because we are in a special situation. We should have adjusted.
Even under normal situation, this should not be happening in the
should
first
not
place.
be happening. Daktari,
Results are out, they come to you.
isn't this a situation whereby now things should be clear, should be succinct? We need PPEs. Here is the money, bring it out. We need this.
Or this is the
here is
plan.
the money, bring it out. Or this is the plan, we're waiting for money. I hear you being very nice, Daktari, at this point. But I mean, there's certain things that need to be done. Health workers on the front line of this thing who need, let's not even talk about everything else that they need. PPEs only. They need this in order to fight this thing. It is not coming out. Why?
I wish I had an answer for that. I wish I had an answer for that. Some of these things, quite frankly, are frustrating as a journalist because and a journalist who knows what should happen and the timelines in which things should happen. And then now when you go and you find that, people are just dragging their feet or things are not moving or there's no clear explanation, or you're told, we supply on a needs basis.
The general lethargy that happens.
So even in a crisis, or even in a situation whereby you would think things would move with greater alacrity, still not happening.
Still not happening.
Right.
Still not happening.
Before we go into the traffic break, Daktari, let's talk about the mass tests that's set to begin. The CAS yesterday announced that they're deploying 12,000 kits for mass testing into Nairobi, Mombasa, Siaya, and Mandera. When is this supposed to be rolled out?
Quite frankly, Eric, I think the right answer would be that I don't know. Because remember last week they said they are testing all healthcare workers, all workers in quarantine facilities, all staffers in hospitals, in all of these areas. That has not been concluded yet. You saw the PS yesterday, and I was actually just wondering, launching mass testing for
the
workers
public
in Kenyatta. It was the public, yes, in Kenyatta. This was something that was announced
a week earlier.
last week, exactly. So even if we say next week,
It's this kind of people just working with it'll happen when it happens.
Yep, which should not be the case.
Which should not be the case at all. That if we are talking about tests are going to, if we are saying that doctors and all medical workers are going to have PPEs, give a specific timeline and say doctors or medics within Nairobi, Kilifi, Kwale, Mombasa, because those are the hotspots, will get within this time. By that time, you're actually coming to say the doctors have already received. Why is it so hard to implement? Just project management. This thing needs to happen by 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, it's done. It needs to happen by tomorrow 5:30. Tomorrow 5:30, it's done. Why just leave things, to vagaries of nature? If it rains, tomorrow if it does not rain, This will happen.
Okay. Yeah. I think, remember when we started all this conversation with you guys, I said that our officials, let me say our government, be it politicians, anyone, find themselves in a situation where they actually have to serve on inch, and it's foreign to them. Otherwise, because when you're in a certain industry, you know there are timelines, there are deliverables, there are certain things which you must meet as part of your day to day. But now
your
people have been
KPIs.
used to, people have been used to sitting in meetings, sitting in another meeting to review minutes of another meeting. You know, those kind of things, capacity building, and never ending cycle. But now here is a situation where those meetings have to result in something tangible.
Yeah.
And translating that, people don't know.
It's become
Or they
quite
forgot.
difficult.
I don't know. Yeah.
Let's take a traffic break and then we can take in questions. You'd like any question that you'd like to ask Dr. Masi, please call in 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can also post your comments on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE on Facebook, Spice FM KE on Twitter, and Instagram as well, Spice FM KE. Good morning, 26 to 10.
All right, traffic around most of the city seems to have dissipated where it was quite heavy. On Mombasa, we saw a little bit of that, but that has opened up now, not much of an issue. Nakuru as well, and then heading off in the direction towards Roiro, that has opened up as well, so no issues there. Getting to the time where we're not going to see any of it until maybe later on when everybody's trying to beat the curfew times. So it's okay, it's good. If you see anything out of the ordinary, let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. But for now, you should be fine.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
0719-012-600. That's KTN's medical journalist, Dr. Masi Kariri. She's on the line with us. Going straight to the questions. Stanley in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question to Dr. Masi, and not necessarily a question, but a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling is we have a number of deaths that have occurred in Kenya as a result of the COVID disease. And looking into what happened in Nyanza about the guy from KPA, I'm thinking, could there be deaths that could have been averted, but because of most likely non-preparedness of our system, we may have averted some deaths, but people died because of maybe lack of preparedness, either in the health system or generally the systems that are there. And if it is there, can we maybe there's need that we need to relook and maybe learn from it so that we are able to improve and maybe don't lose people because of which could have been averted. That is my concern.
Good question. She's going to respond to that. Let me take Osmond in Kisumu. Good morning, Osmond.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Eric City and this Kenyan by choice.
Hey, wait. Let's make that the name.
Yes.
Oh, you are great people.
Say hello to Dr. Masi as well. She's on the
Tell
line.
you that I've been enjoying your show Situation Talk
Mm-hmm.
for quite some time.
Mm.
But what has been my problem was when you say this number 0719, you tweet literally too fast.
Okay.
And I've been picking the number one by one until today I got the whole of it.
You've been picking a number a day for a while.
Feedback taken. I'll slow down.
Mercy.
Yes.
Dr. Mercy ako hapo?
Yes, she's online.
Niko hapa.
Good morning, Dr. Mercy.
Good morning. Good morning to you.
Dr. Mercy, are you working for the Standard newspapers or the government of Kenya?
Dr. Mercy is an employee of the Standard Group, Osmond.
Oh, the Standard. And she's a doctor by profession.
She's a doctor by profession.
She's
She's also a journalist by profession. Yes. Journalist by choice.
A journalist by choice.
Yes.
Good. Daktari?
Yes.
Daktari?
She can hear you. Go ahead.
My question is, masks. They are being arrested around here now. But how do the economy is gone down? We cannot access 20 shillings. The policemen are high on their heels arresting us. How do you people help us?
Which people?
I mean the government. We cannot go to the streets.
So you want the government to give you masks?
But how do we get we don't have the money. We have been put out of employment. I have an option. I have 20 shillings. Is it sukuma wiki or a mask?
Let me quickly just answer this to Osmond. The mask doesn't have to be the surgical mask or the fancy N95 mask that you see. Actually,
so that go for my curtain.
Yeah, you can get a piece of cloth. You can sew it together as long as it covers your nose and mouth, and it's 2 layers.
That's okay.
That's sufficient.
I'll go for anything. So, thanks.
Yeah, cotton 2 layered.
Thank you, Osmond. Thank you, Osmond. So let's take this one also from Zachary Nakuru. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Zachary.
Good morning, Zachary.
Yeah, say hi to the Nigerian who has been our place home.
Good morning.
We actually love her. Then Mariv there, Marimandro.
Thank you, Zachary.
I'll be calling you Marimandro or Father Abraham.
Okay.
And now,
ask a question to Dr.
Sure. Now, okay, mine is not actually a question, but a kind of something, a comment. You have seen a clip doing round of a woman speaking in our language, Kikuyu. And I wish that I could translate whatever she's saying. If she gets somebody who will translate for her, and then she can be able to paint the real picture on the ground.
Tell us what she's saying.
Interpret it for us, please.
I interpret for you.
Yes. In English, yes.
Okay, basically the woman is a very good actor. And she's lamenting about the problems that we are having, okay? And going by the actions and the places she's touching, she's actually saying that even those of us, that is the, I don't know how I call them, but she's saying that everything has come to a standstill. Feeding kids is a problem. People aren't paying rent. And she is trying to say that kids are being forced, some kids are being forced to go without tea. That is without the basic necessities. And she's kind of, I hope you have seen the comments. People are laughing and making some bit of comments there and there. She's trying to say that even those who sell their bodies, they are fighting hard to look for, to fight
make ends meet.
Customers. Definitely. Have you seen that clip, Mr. Ratif?
I think I've seen it going round, yes. So what's your question with regards to that clip? Or what's the comment?
You try to get a Kikuyu who is translating whatever she is saying, and might be that Clary can try to write an article on that and try to show how things are on the ground.
The impacts.
Meaning right across the societal divide, everyone is suffering.
Yeah, but the low class, that is, there is I heard them say that there is the 44th tribe, they had it to mouth tribe, yeah? Although Morimu is not there. Morimadro is not in that tribe. He has been working for a long time and he has savings. So, actually,
Zachary, I get the point. Let me pick this other one. This is Karume in Homa Bay. Karume, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation. Do you have a question for Dr. Masi?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask Dr. Masi. Is this virus, the coronavirus, can it be picked from the ground? I was listening to some radio station yesterday saying that scientists in China have discovered that it can be picked by shoes from the ground.
Okay.
Yes.
She's going to respond to that. You want to? Let me take this other one, then you can answer all of them. Bernard in Nairobi.
Okay.
Bernard.
Hello, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Daktari. How are you?
Good morning, Bernard. I'm very well, thank you.
Okay. Now my question is a simple one. Huh? I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to remember the name of this epidemiologist who's advocating for herding, in the essence of trying to get as many people infected so that then the immunity of the community can be built up. Huh? I'm trying to remember his name, but I can't remember. Maybe Dr. Masi might have a clue. Anyway, my question is this. We have the situation in Kenya where we are on semi-lockdown, and we are hoping that the disease might not, or rather the disease will come to an end in terms of its spread. But from what I was reading from this doctor is that probably as we shut down and as we lock down, we're inhibiting the disease, and when we open up, then we are going to have an issue. We are going to have full-blown cases coming out. I don't know what your take on that is, Dr.
Okay, all right. Let me start with that one on the issue of herd immunity. I remember the UK was planning, this actually was their strategy, that let people get infected and then they'll develop immunity against this disease, and then we'll be able now to not be susceptible or not be at risk of the coronavirus moving forward. So in theory, it works, but the question is at what cost? Because it means if you look at the global statistics, then you will have lost about 4%, even 5% of the people who would have been infected. And then when you look at it, you see that you will lose your most vulnerable, your elderly generation and whatnot. So there are all of those things, because when you talk about all of these statistics, projections and models and everything, at the end of the day, it is human beings, it's people who are making those numbers. So the question always is, at what cost? So as it is now, what is happening in the country, the disease is already here, there's community transmission evidently, but it's like what we are doing in this flattening the curve, okay, which is now what I'm thinking, we are prolonging the curve really, because we are giving ourselves a longer time for the infections to run their course, and in that way we are able to manage the numbers that are coming in. So far we've been able to, but from what I'm seeing with the numbers going up, we may have to change that strategy because not all our isolation facilities, especially the ones in Nairobi, can accommodate everyone in this list. So the issue of herd immunity will probably just occur naturally as opposed to it being enabled to occur because there'll be a human cost to it. So that's my own thinking about herd immunity. I wouldn't really advocate for it because at the end of the day, it's people who will lose their parents, their children, so it may not be the right way to go about it.
Okay.
Zachary was talking about... Sorry?
The issue of shoes?
Oh, yes, that it could be big. Okay, right now there's so many studies on the coronavirus that are happening across the world. Some are peer-reviewed, some are not peer-reviewed, some are anecdotal. So I've not personally come across this one on shoes. The one that I've seen was a study where 39 days later, the virus was still picked after 39 days after somebody turned negative on a nasal swab. They still turned positive on sputum, and some had positive samples on fecal matter. So the issue here that now the scientists are looking at is, yes, if it's in the environment, is it infectious at that stage? Which for me would be a more important question to answer as opposed to it being found. Because if it's found in the environment lying around and it is not infectious, then it means it is not harmful. So that is the question that people are now trying to figure out. Is it infectious way after, let's say, the first 7 days of symptoms resolving? Is this virus still viable? And that's what they are looking at. So for me, that would be my focus, because evidently it is still in the environment. And this is now the argument that I've been raising, or I was trying to raise with the government, that you have asymptomatic people, for example, in isolation facilities, or people with mild symptoms, and a majority of our people who've been admitted have mild symptoms. As it basically, they would have been better off at home. But the government protocol is that you have to test negative on 2 consecutive samples, 24 hours apart, for you to be declared healed or recovered or virus-free. But if studies are showing that even 39 days later you can still have the virus, what sense then does it make to keep people with mild symptoms or people who are asymptomatic in hospital? Because clearly they can still have a virus. So will you keep them for 39, 40 days? What if the virus we have here will stay for 60 days? Will you still keep people in hospital? So my question would be, is it infectious? If it's not, then we can go about our day-to-day issues, because these are some of the issues now that we will look at when we are thinking of how to come out of this semi-lockdown, or how to cope with what is happening. And now that reminds me on the testing. So there are two sorts of testing. The antigen-based or the PCR-based, where you actually look for the DNA in the virus. That is the one that has been happening here. And then there is the antibody-based, where you check in blood, like what we do with the HIV test. You put in a strip, and then you see who has been infected in the recent past. And that now would be able to answer the question of herd immunity, because you may do the antibody test and you find that a good number of us had this infection and we got over it, and so we have immunity. Then when you find that, then you're able to say, okay, maybe people can go about their business because they are immune. And I was seeing one of the studies in China saying that they estimate, comparing with SARS-CoV-1, that is the SARS that had caused the epidemic in 2003, that this immunity may last for a year or 2. I think a maximum of 3 years. So those are now the questions that I would expect government to answer. That yes, we are actively testing for active disease or for presence of the virus, but also we are looking at who in the community has already been infected and they've developed immunity, so that it can inform certain decisions and certain measures that we are to do as a government. And this will quickly answer Zachary, where he's rightly saying that it's like things have come to a standstill. Even now, people are going, if you go to hospital with a cough, the first thing people will think about is coronavirus. Yet, there are so many other things that could give you a cough, even influenza itself. So things sort of have changed, and it is all COVID-related. So we need to start having answers, because we need to move. So we probably need to start doing this antibody testing to figure out who has been infected, or we do mass testing to find out who has the virus actively. But we have to move from where we are, because we cannot stay in this state for an indefinite period of time. Then the first question was not really a question, but a feeling, I don't know, a comment about if some of these deaths could be averted. And how I see a death, any death really, is like an air crash. Usually there are so many factors working around that one accident. It is not usually one thing that has caused an accident. And I say air crash because these are not, when those accidents happen, they are really, they're not as common as you would do road traffic accidents, because there's a lot of safety and all of those measures, trainings and everything put in place. So the same with a death, you'd find that there are so many factors usually working around some of the deaths that we see. That's why postmortems and all of those things are usually important, because you also look at the circumstances. Now, coming to COVID, some of the deaths that we've reported, when you trail back, you find that one, either there was a delay in seeking health services, or when you went to the health facility, the disease was not picked up early, or the diagnostic took long because people are considering something else, or people realized late that this was critical condition, that somebody needed a ventilator. So usually a number of issues working around that end up culminating in a death. So how I see preparedness to avert any of these deaths is two-pronged. One, from an individual perspective, where we, first of all, try as much as possible not to get infected or not to contract the virus anywhere. Two is, when you get the virus or when you suspect that you're sick because of this, is to declare at the very first point when you go to the hospital. And this is what I've been saying. This would help you, because it would help people know how to triage you and how to assist you as soon as possible. So is to just say, I suspect, or I've traveled, or whatever it is, or I've met somebody with COVID, anything, just so that people can start being pointed to the right direction. And then now the second prong that I look at is from our healthcare providers, because by the time because we are averting death, it means you need hospital care. So the other one is from our healthcare providers. The hospitals, are they well equipped to attend to you? The personnel there, straight from the watchman up to the cleaner, the patient porter, the nurse, the doctor, are they well prepared to handle you? Do they know what to do when things complicate? Do they have the capabilities and all the equipment that they need to act and help you? And now overall to all this, how I see it is now government enables all of us to be able to act like that. Government, for example, in this case, a good example is to provide social protection, so that me protecting myself from contracting the disease is easy. I do not have to think about, like Osmond, where I have 20 shillings and I'm wondering, do I buy a mask or do I have food? There should be a cushion, a social net for such kind of things. On the healthcare facilities or the healthcare providers, then there should be a cushion that enables these people to work ultimately. That's why we are talking about the PPEs. That's why we're talking about the turnaround time with the testing. So all of these things, all of us are a part of it, but the umbrella there that enables us, is an enabler, should be government. That's why ultimately we hold them to account. We have to put their feet to the fire.
Okay, I think we have time to squeeze in one last question, Dr. Tari. The HBC model from the Ministry of Health has not reached hospitals and other facilities. Recovered patients are being discharged to integrate with the community. Is that okay?
Recovered patients, according to the Ministry of Health definition, is somebody who has tested negative on 2 consecutive samples. That's what they are using currently. So for the people who've been discharged home, they are okay. They are okay. They are not infectious, so we should not stigmatize, because I've talked to some who they go and their neighbors are not sure how to handle them. They are being shunned. So the ones the government has discharged to go home have tested negative. Now, when you talk about the home-based care, this is for people with mild infections or moderate symptoms, or people who do not have any symptoms that have tested positive. the rules will be the same. They are in isolation for about 14 days. Okay, for 14 days, and there are certain measures to follow while in isolation, so that they do not spread or they do not transmit the disease to anyone else in the household who would be taking care of them. So those measures are there. So what government has been, the Ministry of Health has been slow in implementing is this home-based care, because I think from where they are, they're not sure if people will follow the guidelines, or if somebody will come home for 3 days and after 3 days they are tired, they want to walk around the community, and the Ministry of Health does not yet have
proper monitoring mechanisms, right?
On the ground,
Right. I think we can talk about the home-based care in our conversation tomorrow, so we can get into greater detail into this and what to expect. Of course, right now we still don't have that home-based care because we haven't reached those kind of numbers yet. But I think it's important for us to start understanding and preparing ourselves for what is yet to come. Thank you very much for speaking to us today, Dr. Mercy Korir.
Thank you very much.
Tomorrow you'll join us again on the air, of course, in the 9 to 10 o'clock hour.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terry.
Thank you so much. Do have a good day.
You too.
Yeah. Listen to today's proverb.
Okay.
Usitukane mkunga na uzazi ungalipo. Do not insult the midwife when yet the child is still being born, or when childbearing is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
Yes.
Naona umeenda kwa Swahili.
Nimeenda to a Kenyan proverb stated in Kiswahili.
Bas.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll speak to you tomorrow, Dr. Ari.
All right.
And thank you for tuning in to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. Good morning. It's now 10 a.m.